I'd like to call this meeting to order. As soon as I retrieve my agenda again, I think I buried it here. This is the November 16th, 2022 regular meeting of the Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission. Item number 1 is called to order. Item number 2 is seat alternates to act if required. John, you're still an alternate, yes? Yes, okay, so we have Commissioner Carbone joining us this evening. And item number 3 is hearing of residents. Residents who, let's see, this time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the Planning and Zoning Commission. Each person should fill out the speaker's register prior to the meeting. Presentation should be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Discussion by the commission of any item not on the agenda shall be limited to the statements of specific factual information given in response to any inquiry, a recitation of existing policy in response to an inquiry, and or a proposal to place the item on future agenda. The presiding officer during the hearing of residents portion of the agenda will call on those persons who have signed up to speak in the order they have registered. So we have quite a few people signed up tonight. It looks like everybody wants to talk about the rezoning and the comp plan agenda. So you've signed up to speak during this portion. So you have a couple of options. You can speak now and speak at the public hearing. You're not required to sign up. The public hearing is open to anybody. Option number 2 is you can waive your time here and then just speak at the public hearing. So I will call on you one by one, and again, if you want to speak twice, you're more than welcome to do that. But in the interest of keeping the meeting to a reasonable length, I will ask you to try your best to stick to 3 minutes. Okay? First on the list is Sam Birch. And as you come up, I need you, please, if you would state your name and address for the record. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I saw the scribble through the, and yeah, I didn't see, yes, Maria, come on up. Okay. And again, if you would, please, both of you, your name and address for the record.
Maria Ellison.
And Sam Birch reading for Maria and Rod Ellison.
Okay, and the address?
Okay, and my address is 12762 Woman Hollering Road.
Go ahead.
We oppose in the strongest possible sentiment the proposed zoning change referenced as PLZ C20220124, rezoning 31 acres of Tom Williams Estate located east of the intersection FM 1518 and Woman Hollering Road. I, Rod, am a retired 31-year Air Force veteran, now serving as the minister for Randolph Church of Christ. My wife is a retired nurse. Our property is just southeast of the proposed site and backs up directly to Woman Hollering Creek. The proposal will increase runoff, placing our house in a flood zone. Over the last 3 years, the rapid development of the surrounding farmland has redrawn the area flood map, steadily increasing and enveloping the amount of our 7-acre property identified flood zone. This proposed project threatens our dwelling at 127862 Woman Hollering Road in the flood zone, threatening property, our financial security, and our legacy to our children. Second, the increased traffic of a minimum of 210 cars, the actual number will likely double that amount based on 2 vehicles per household, will quadruple the traffic on Woman Hollering Road and even more on Quailwood Run. The problem is there is a finite amount of road surface on these 2 private roads. The proposed plan offers 2 ingress and egress into the apartment complex, which recognizes the need to prevent bottlenecks and choke points for the residents of the new structure. However, due to the constraints of land and access to 1518, there will remain only 1 ingress and egress into Tom Williams Estates. This will severely impede the flow of traffic on Woman Hollering Road to include access at 1518. A stop has been made at the intersection of Woman Hollering Road. However, this solution will not ease the congestion on Woman Hollering and Quailwood Run, nor will a stoplight facilitate traffic in and out of the neighborhood. More importantly, none of the proposed solutions will significantly alleviate the negative impact of a numerically dramatic increase in vehicle traffic within a small finite amount of road space. This increase is a recipe for not only auto accidents, but also pedestrian, bicyclists, and children's safety. We want to be clear that our opposition is not only about the increase and inconvenience of additional traffic, it is very much a safety issue. Emergency vehicles cannot expeditiously enter or exit a property during rush hour. My last concern is primarily a financial issue. All residents of Quailwood Run and Woman Hollering Road share the upkeep of the two roads. As we understand the current proposal, the front half of Woman Hollering Road up to and including the intersection of Quailwood Run will be maintained by the new proposed dwelling. However, the back half will remain a private road and the responsibility of 9 families living east and south of Quailwood Run and Woman Hollering Road intersection. The financial burden will fall on 9 families who cannot afford the upkeep and maintenance of the road, further negatively impacting our property's value. Again, in the strongest possible terms, Maria and I, Rod, oppose the zoning change.
Okay, and this is my neighbor that read this for me.
Okay. Is that all you had, Miss?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, you know what, and one other thing I'd like
Okay.
to say is there is a charter school that is on 1518.
Yes.
And they have had to hire security to get the cars in and out of their parking lot because of the traffic control, and it's a safety issue. And that is for the school. That's not even, saying the, possibly 400 cars that would be coming in and out of our street.
Yes, ma'am. All right, thank you. Okay, just so the one that scribbled to her name, you're not? Oh, okay, but you're further, you're still on the list here. Okay, all right, Mr. Birch, your turn.
My name is Sam Birch, and I live at 12858 Woman Hollering Road. And I also strongly oppose this rezoning plan for many reasons. Like many of my neighbors, we all moved to this neighborhood because it was a rural estate neighborhood. Going back as far as I can from every plan on the Schertz comprehensive plan, they also see it as either rural or estate neighborhood, not R4, not apartment complexes. This is why we moved where we moved. On this road, a couple of things that I want to point out. This making apartment complexes on that road, using the private road there, is not consistent with either the comprehensive plan or the purposes and intent of all those who are living on that private road, who have only that access to 1518. That is our feeder road. That is the way we get to 1518 and anywhere else. Also, we don't believe that this zone change would be consistent with surrounding uses. All those on our side of the road, where it has been deemed in Schertz comprehensive plans as estate neighborhoods, would find themselves now having a very different feel to the neighborhood. We would no longer have the peace or serenity of having estates in a rural setting, which is what we moved to this location for. Additionally, I don't think it's consistent with many of the values that are in the policies for the way that Schertz comprehensive land plan states. Just a couple of things that stand out to me, page 4.5 says that in general, potential negative land use impacts, noise, odor, pollution, excessive light, traffic, etc., should be considered and minimized to protect enjoyment or value of property. It is difficult as it is with just the homes that are on Woman Hollering Road to turn out of our road onto 1518, given the charter school and the neighborhoods that have been built across the road. It is extraordinarily difficult during working rush hour to be able to get out of our road. Adding 200, potentially 400 vehicles coming out that same single exit would be outrageously impossible. So that would definitely not be minimizing or that would not be protecting the enjoyment or value of our property. The compatibility should be maintained, compatibility with existing uses. And as other neighbors said, the floodplain is a big concern. All that drainage, all that concrete coming off and having nowhere to go but Woman Hollering Creek is going to put my home, again, in the floodplain. So if my home gets put in the floodplain, do I have any way, who pays for that? Because of a rezoning in a neighborhood that was put in, does that fall only on me? Again, so where's the burden lying for these plans?
Okay. Are you just about, can you wrap it up for us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I think really, between the safety of coming in and out of the road, the ideals of a rural estate neighborhood, and the ability to maintain the values of our homes and enjoy what we've already purchased is a key thing. Not only we, but even the current property that's being considered for rezoning has enjoyed the rural estate life the entire time that the folks who have lived there. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Raymond Torgerson?
My name is Raymond Bruce Torgerson, and I am opposing the item agenda A and B. I live at 8795 Quailwood Run, with 800 feet of adjoining the 31 acres you propose to rezone from a wildlife conservation to apartments. When the Air Force assigned me to Randolph Air Force Base, we wanted a home in the country to raise our children. We were fortunate enough to purchase our current home in 1994. We started building a home and a future for our children. We did not have much money back then, and so we had to do everything ourselves, or a lot of it ourselves. We put in vegetable gardens, fruit trees, we raised Barbados sheep, and we worked and took care of our property for our kids. In 2000, I was assigned to the Pentagon, but we still kept our home in Schertz on Quailwood Run. And whenever we could get back to Schertz, on holidays, summertime, we continued to build. We built a grape arbor, a workshop, a pavilion where our daughter got married. Upon retirement, I taught junior ROTC in high school in Maryland and then moved back to Texas. In those years, the next few years, we put in a pool, and then with our children's help, we did a pool house, landscaping, and additional fencing. We were building a place to enjoy with our children and now our grandchildren. We were building a place for our retirement, building a nest egg if circumstances required it. Even though there has been development along 1518 over the years, our subdivision has kept its rural flavor. Kathy and I are not moving. We are going to stay there until we cannot take care of our home or take care of ourselves. We have built a place of value to give to our children, to give them a choice in how to take care of us down the road if it comes time. But the city of Schertz wants to take away our rural living and our nest egg, taking our property values by allowing apartments to be built next door to right on our property line. Is this an appropriate development for 31 acres out of 300 acres of the Tom Williams Estate neighborhood? And we say no. People bought the land out there and built homes out there to have rural living and still be close to town. Where is your assessment on the impact to our community? People talked about runoff. How about the removal of those heritage oaks that are on there? There's a lot of them. Congestion. We've talked a lot about congestion already, so I won't go into that. The ability for a safe exit and entrance, they've talked about that. On the 1518, somebody has already talked about. And how can we trust a developer who has been in business for a year and is yet to complete a project? We want you, the city of Schertz, to look not only at the impact of this project, but the interests of the neighborhood residents and not just the dollars, please. We strongly recommend you disapprove these zoning requests and adhere to those core values of yours of doing the right thing. I also would like to submit, I have photographs for you showing my property, and that blank field over there is where it's going to be a wall of apartments. And so they'll look right into my backyard, and I will look at them.
You're welcome, sir. I'm sorry, I need to pause, or just, not you, Mr. Torgerson. I meant at the start of the meeting, I just needed to let anyone that may be at home watching this stream on YouTube that we are still having IT issues, and you will be able to see us and hear the audio, but you will not be able to see any projections, any slides or presentations that are made during tonight's meeting. So I apologize, I meant to say that at the beginning and I forgot. Steve Slate.
Steve Slate, my address is 8600 Quillwood Run, and I also am representing my mother-in-law who lives next door, 8540 Quillwood Run. And this is the first time I've done this, so can I ask questions, or is it just to speak?
Yes, sir, you can ask questions, and when we're done with, when we actually get to the public hearing, either staff will try to answer those, or we'll try to answer them for you, but yes.
The first question is I would like to know when the survey was conducted, what the date the survey was conducted on this property. Does anybody know that?
We'll just, I think staff will note your questions, and we'll, because you only have 3 minutes, so
Okay.
We'd rather address those at the end.
Well, the second question is can someone tell me what a buffer area is?
Okay.
And third, has there been any kind of survey or study, a long-term survey or study done on the effects of building this in that area? Because part of that area is supposedly a wildlife research area. And I think it's ironic that you designate that as a wildlife research area and then tear it down and build houses or apartments or whatever on it. I guess lastly, since all I'm asking questions and I can't get them answered, is we do, just say this on the record, vote no for both of the rezoning things. And people have talked about traffic, and I don't know if y'all are aware, but if you get on 1518 and go south in the morning or afternoon, you can be on that road for a less than a mile stretch for over 25 minutes just to get off the road. And if you add 200 plus new people right there on that intersection where it's hard enough to get on at that time, you're creating a huge problem. A huge problem. And I guess, like I said, I just got a bunch of questions, but I'll just finish with this. Our road has been designated private. I've been told it was private. My wife's parents have lived there since 1977, and we were told that the city of Schertz would not repave it, take care of it, or whatever, because it costs too much. So we have been maintaining that the 15 years that I've lived there and almost 50 years that her parents have lived there. We pay, we go fix it. You can ask the people back here, put down the stuff, pound it down, all that stuff. Probably every year, every other year. And this year, one of the guys just took it on his own initiative and he repaved the whole thing, both our road and the other road. And I, again, don't understand how a city can designate something and then take over a private road after not willing to lift a finger to take care of it for 50 plus years and let someone else buy the property and then take it over that way. I think that's wrong. And so that's pretty much all I have.
All right, sir, and just to make it clear, we'll try to answer your questions. But once again, you only have 3 minutes to speak, and we could use up that 3 minutes answering one of your questions. So that's why we rather defer them and try to answer them as after everyone's had a chance to speak. Okay? Oh, and one more thing, if you have more questions, you get another chance to speak later in the meeting. Okay? All right. Is it Michelle Slate? Well, I tell you what, I don't normally do this, but I'll let her give you her time if you want to come back up. Well, you probably still don't want to wait for answers because she's only going to give you another 3 minutes. Okay? All right. Robert, is it Stanfield? He can come up during the public hearing.
I won't be here. I've got a meeting. I'm a minister and I'm in the middle of
All right. You caught me in a good mood. Come on up.
Appreciate that very much. My
Name
name
and-
is
name and address.
Rod Ellison. I live at 12762 Woman Hauling Road, 31 years, United States Air Force, retired. I was the ATC command chief when I retired. Before that, I was the Air Command command chief, Air Combat Command. We've lived there for about 18 years now. And when we bought our property, obviously, as everyone said, it's the rural setting. We came here for the master plan meeting. Promises were made by, I know last time we were here, no one on this panel, but we were told 5-acre estates. That if we agreed to be annexed, we were annexed. And now we're going to redo that master plan, and everyone says, well, we weren't those people. You're sitting in their seats. And every time a decision is made by here, you know that there are first, second, third order effects. The first order effect of what's happened so far is that the runoff already has caused us to lose half our acreage. This project will cause our house to be in the floodplain. Last year, 3 inches of rain, and I've said this before, Joey Vasquez, who works just down the street from us, was driving his 3 daughters to school. A place that had never flooded before washed his car and his daughters away. As he held onto his youngest daughter's hand, the water took her, and she passed away along with 2 other people. There are consequences that nobody wants to stand up and say, well, our decisions impacted that. Not directly, but very much indirectly. You're not going to bring that little girl back. You're not going to sit with Joey as we have sat with Joey. He has nightmares to this day. There are consequences to everything that you guys do. There is no way that you can build that property and not have the runoff. In fact, that day, for the first time for us, across from Corbett Middle School, we were redirected to go through the base because 1518 was closed. Everybody talks about we've got the drainage. You know what happens. You can do the retention ponds, but eventually that water has to go somewhere. That day, it went across 1518. It went across 1518 to where Joey lost his little girl. I don't know how you do that. We talked to the builder. We're going to do that. No, you're not. And it's what was said. Who pays? Who reimburses us? You can't reimburse somebody for a life. All we're asking is for you to live up to the promises that you made when you annexed us. That property was supposed to stay rural, minimum 5-acre estates. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, and you were Rod Ellison, is that right?
Rodney Ellison.
Okay, so you were just
Minister Randolph Church of Christ.
a little further down the list. All right, sir. Take care. Okay, back to the list. Robert Stanfield? Okay.
My address is 12654 Woman Hollering Road. I've got a little thing here I wrote, so I'd like to read that and just tell you, my wife and I are opposed to this rezoning, the whole thing. My wife and I purchased our home in the Woman Hollering neighborhood a little over a year ago. We're from out of state. When we first entered the tree-lined road, we fell in love with the area. It's a beautiful place, and we saw the secluded estate-type homes, the large properties, and we thought this was what we wanted. Our neighborhood consists of, different types of homes. We have all unique properties, and the streets are cul-de-sac, so we don't have a lot of traffic. It's a unique place. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's very unique to the area. Our home is spacious enough for to accommodate our family and friends, and my wife enjoys taking care of chickens. We've got some chickens now, and we're having fun with those, and I have a 3-car garage that I have some projects that I enjoy taking care of those, and I do my workouts and stuff in my garage. My wife takes her walks down Woman Hollering Road, and you've already heard the traffic issues. She has no problems walking up and down. It's safe right now. It's easy to walk up and down and get her exercise. So when we first moved here, we knew that the property across our street, I'm right at the corner of Woman Hollering and Quailwood Run. So right there, we knew that that property was going to get developed, but we thought that it was going to be in the manner that we're living currently in a state-type situation. And so we were really surprised to see this come up, that it was going to be a, apartment-type rental housing that we thought doesn't match up and isn't suitable for the area. Let me turn my page real quick. Okay. We think it's going to jeopardize our neighborhood and the way of life that we have here. A lot of my neighbors feel the same way. We know that we need high-density housing in the community. We understand that. I think everybody here does. We need a variety of housing. And we've got lots of land that my wife and I have driven by that face the 1518, 78. We see it on 3009. There's apartment complexes that appear to be more suitable for the large vehicle, large numbers of vehicles to enter and exit quite easily. So we see it as a problem obviously for the vehicles. So anyway, I don't think our neighborhood is the place for the high density housing. I just want to emphasize that you guys are the planning committee. You guys are the ones that are going to approve these things, and it's a tremendous responsibility on your part to develop this city in a manner that's going to be, conducive for everybody to enjoy, and from the young to the old, we're all going to enjoy this place, and so what you approve is going to affect us later down the road and in future generations. So please keep that in mind, and I ask you this: please consider how unique our neighborhood is. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's so unique. It really is. You come off that street, 1518, and you go into a different world. Please consider that. If you haven't been down there, please come down and look at it. And consider that we need a development that's going to be similar to what we have. And it's going to be sensible, responsible, and in a manner that reflects the community and enhances our neighborhood, enhances the value of all these folks' homes. And it preserves our rural life. It's going away quickly here. We all see that. We know it's going away. But can you preserve our little spot of our paradise? Thank you.
All right. You're welcome, sir. Sandra Hillard?
Hi, my name's Sandra Hillard. I live at 7009 Robin Hood Way in Schertz Forest. Recently, the council heard the residents of Crossvine voice their concerns opposing the affordable housing apartment complex located across from Crossvine off of 1518. However, it appears based on the approval of the rezoning for affordable housing that the concerns of the residents of Crossvine did not resonate with this council. We hope our concerns for the proposal to rezone Woman Hollering Road into apartments bears greater weight and influence on your decision. 2 points. The impact of apartment complexes will increase traffic in our area, and currently we have major road deterioration. Lower Seguin Road, Ware Seguin Road, and even in our Schertz Forest neighborhood needs to be fixed. We have potholes, bumpy roads, severe cracking, separation. We all drive on the side of the road. It's hard to even ride a bike with the cracks. The city sent out a survey team just to our neighborhood a couple years ago. It was determined that it needs to be fixed. It needs to be repaired. But we kind of feel like we're out of sight and out of mind, but we all pay city taxes. Project keeps getting pushed back, so we would like to see some movement or action on that. Second point, did a little bit of research on Realtor.com. There was an article on the neighborhoods that features that are dragged down from home value, the ranking, high concentration of renters, clusters of rental buildings. It's pretty hard to do an analysis on every single property. However, according to American Community Survey, the zip codes with higher than average concentration of renters have lower property values compared to county they're located in, by 14%. Lowers the value of your homes. And we all pay taxes. We all have some pretty nice homes. And I feel genuinely for these people who live on that road because it is a rural community. And hope that you will oppose allowing an apartment complex, another apartment complex, and it's just closing in on Schertz Forest. So we're very concerned. And thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Catherine Torgerson.
Hi there, thanks for listening. My name's Catherine Torgerson. I live at 8795 Quailwood Run. I'm opposing agenda items A and B. I come before you today to challenge the R4 zoning in our rural neighborhood. I am appalled that the city of Schertz can so blithely disenfranchise the ETJ residents who have to rely on you to be fair and open to our needs. It is distressing in the extreme that decisions have been made without regard to the interests of our neighborhood. Where is the coordination between the community and the city of Schertz, a core value at the top of your city's agenda? The fast tracking of this rezoning request is a case in point. First, signs go up rezoning on Friday, November 4th, touting a public hearing. Letters are received on Saturday, November 5th, some not until the 7th on Monday. You know how it is when you're out in the country. You're not checking your mailbox every day. We all do everything online. We're not getting a lot of stuff in the mail. But, so, if you don't check your mail, you didn't see it, you're not going to have the information. So those people become disenfranchised. We called the planning department on Monday, November 7th, to secure an appointment with your planning staff on Tuesday, November 8th. We arrive and meet with your staff. We express our opposition to the zoning, and literally, your staff couldn't have been more dismissive if they had tried. Your staff informs us that it wouldn't matter if everyone was opposed. The council could still enact the rezoning request. You can't imagine how discouraging and irritating this attitude was to us. We are in our 70s. Where are we going to start over? With the kind of amenities we built on our property, where are we going to go? We're too old to start over. 2 days later, November 10th, the agenda is published and the planning staff is recommending approval, all without any input from our community as a whole. You have changed the process to not one of an open hearing, but an open ignoring, with the attitude that the general public does not matter as long as the city of Schertz gets its way. The reality is that an R4 zoning smack dab in the middle of a rural community is inappropriate. Do the right thing. Do your real due diligence. Discover how this will adversely affect our neighborhood. And I appreciate your consideration.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Todd, is it Vikian?
Thank you, sir. It's Todd Vishen from 8926 Green Grant. And at the risk of being resident obvious, I think it's significant that so many residents want to speak, knowing that you may actually table this agenda item. We want to be heard on the record. A few core concerns, and I won't go in depth into all of them because many of them have been addressed here. But creating the unacceptable increase of traffic on already strained resources. As has been said, this would be the second apartment complex in the same general area. And information from Council Member Whitaker today, she said she talked to TxDOT, and the 1518 project is probably not going to be finished for at least 6 years. And so we're creating a problem that we don't need to. This would increase the density in the noise contour from Randolph, and we expect them to get more and louder aircraft. Again, creating another problem we don't need to create. Potential overcrowding of the schools and requirement on public safety services, and the negative impact on the open spaces. It's interesting when you look on the Schertz website, 2 of the rotating pictures there are from Crossvine, the rural area. So that's what we're advertising to residents and future residents, and could potentially be changing that with this if you approve this proposal. And the comprehensive land use plan obviously doesn't allow for multifamily in this area, and it's being amended, I understand, by the city. So why would we amend and change the zoning while the city staff is actually in the process of updating the comprehensive land use plan? So instead of develop this area, I think we should do it responsibly and with resident input through this commission. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. A lot of good questions being asked. And Casey Starr.
My name is Casey Starr. I live at 4206 Jennifer Nicole, but I represent members of the Tom Williams community who are opposed to Proposition A and B. I'm going to talk to you briefly about public policy and the law. I'm going to try to not be repetitive of what's already been said here today. With respect to public policy, if you enact the zoning plan, a plan that would take a rural ETJ neighborhood with 22 houses and a single-lane private road and allow a developer to shove up to 600 apartments right into the heart of it, you will create an overcrowded, underserved urban community with traffic problems, safety problems, and infrastructure problems. And to be clear, yes, there's a plan floating around by the developer who says he's only going to put in 220 units, but the zoning change requested would allow over 600 onto this piece of property. Between the Crossvine and the new apartment complex you guys have recently approved just down the road, the horrible 1518 traffic is already on its way to gridlock every day. We've heard a lot about that. But adding another apartment complex would be deadly for this community. The developers are already planning, under a conservative, only 220 apartments, to pave 20 acres, solid concrete. And that's the drainage problem that we're talking about. And then we've talked about the private road. It's not just a traffic problem. It is an emergency services problem. This community, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, is full of retired, disabled, wonderful people who are going to need emergency services, and there will be an ambulance that will not be able to get in. There will be an ambulance that will not be able to get out. It's inevitable. The proposed plan is against public policy, against community trust, violates decades of public trust. With respect to the law, in my perspective, and based on my experience, the city has committed a procedural error, one that if not corrected, I will correct in court. The Private Real Property Rights Preservation Act requires the city to conduct a written taking impacts assessment and provide a summary to affected landowners at least 30 days before a public hearing when a city is considering government action. Government action is very specifically designed and defined in the Act, and changing something like this within the ETJ falls squarely within that definition. And it doesn't matter if the city started the ball rolling or the property owner started the ball rolling, because the Act is designed to help and protect all affected property owners. And it makes sense. A landowner in the city should not be able to unilaterally change the use of a property without looking into what that means for its citizens. This community is made up of decorated, disabled, retired, veterans, widows, farmers, active service members, busy families, and school-aged children. This is not how we treat that community. To make a decision that affects their livelihoods on short notice, without even looking into what that change would look like and what that change would mean for them, because we know what that change would mean for them. Loss of use of enjoyment of their land, drop in property values, loss of home equity, unconscionable impediments to access, drainage problems, traffic problems, safety problems, infrastructure problems. These ETJ residents, most of the ones that have spoken to you, they don't get to vote in Schertz elections. They don't have a say in who sits on their city council, and they don't have a say of you guys sitting in that chair. But you sit here today, and you get a say in their livelihood. And so we beg you, the top of the meeting, top of the agenda, Schertz, it says core values, do the right thing, treat others how you want to be treated. And I guarantee you, not one of you would recommend this plan if 1,200 apartments were going up next door to you. Not one of you would sign up for this plan if it meant your home was going to be put in a floodplain. None of you would recommend this plan if it was your property on the line. So please do the right thing and recommend not accepting the plan. Thank you.
You're welcome. Nick Dyer? Okay. Alberta Lundquist. Sam, could you help her with the microphone, please?
That's okay, I'm going to speak for her.
Oh, okay.
I'm Martin Lundquist, 8630 East, FM 1518 North. I'm her son, Joe Lundquist. We have been on the property since the late 70s when we moved into the Tom Williams estate subdivision. That's exactly what we were looking for, was an estate subdivision. She still lives there currently today, and when she passes on, it will be left to her children, and we will be there. We don't feel it's right to put rental housing apartments in the middle of an estate subdivision. There's other properties down the road for sale where something like this can be built, but we don't want it stuck right in the center of our estate subdivision. I'm not going to say more. Everything else is more or less been covered.
What I want to say is the traffic out there is so horrible. You're taking your life in your hands every time. You just don't understand.
Anyway, she's strongly opposed to the changes. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry.
And you were Joe, is that correct? Yes. Well, you're also on the list. Would you like to, do you have anything else? Okay. All right. All right, sir. Darren Turner.
I'm Darren Turner. My address is 12700 Woman Hollering Road. I moved into the neighborhood about 7 years ago, and exactly as the other neighbors have said, we look for a nice, cozy estate. I'm not going to go into, I think all the fine neighbors here have put it pretty well. I provide some additional context that several years ago, we actually reached out to the Commissioner's office about the traffic proposed, change for the road and how that would impact our neighborhood and coming out of our neighborhood as a safety issue. So we can go back and pull all that documentation, provide that if necessary. On top of that, as an individual that has put blood, sweat, and tears into the road and has flooded my workshop, I would like to strongly oppose the proposal you have here tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Rolanda Turner.
My name is Rolanda Turner. My address is 12700 Woman Hollering Road. Pretty much everything that I think has already been said, so I'll just keep it short and sweet. I strongly oppose and ask you to please not approve this. There are plenty of other pieces of property out there where they could put apartments where it wouldn't be right in the middle of an existing beautiful rural community. So please do not approve this. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and once again, when we get to the public hearing, those of you that haven't spoken or wish to speak again, we'll address that. Okay, item 4 is our consent agenda. We have a single item.
Mr.
Minutes for
Outlaw.
the October 26, 2022 regular meeting.
Mr. Outlaw,
What?
we have the items that were sent in for hearing.
We'll get those in the public hearing.
They asked for during hearing of residents in the email.
Those are appropriate. I was going to let you read them. The public hearing, they chose to sign up and speak, okay? Those are appropriate for the public hearing. But it really doesn't matter. It's going to take the same amount of time. Come on up and read them. Come on. And what Ms. Grovey has here is we provide the opportunity for folks that for whatever reason can't make the meeting. They can submit their comments by email. And what she's going to read you are, you know, a lot of you got that notice and it allowed you to send in opposed, in favor of. Well, that's what she has. These have been sent in by email. So go ahead, Emily.
And then just so everybody knows, there are 6 of them, so bear with me. The first one is from Emily Torgerson at 8795 Quailwood Run. My name is Emily Torgerson, and I could not be in attendance tonight. I'm submitting my comments regarding meeting agenda items PL-CPA 2022-164 and PL-ZC 2022-0124. I ask that you not consider these items and keep the 31 acres in question as an estate neighborhood designation. My parents, retired Air Force Colonel Raymond Bruce and Kathy Torgerson, bought the property about 3 decades ago. The property brought with it the idea of building a home that would become a legacy for the Torgerson family for years to come. My parents' property at 8795 Quailwood Run is my heritage, my family's legacy, and my 3-year-old son's future. The developer working with the Rumans wants to put in 210 rental units, 44 of which will be along our 800-foot boundary line. They have planned 2 entrance points to this new development, private roads paid for and maintained by the Tom Williams estate neighbors. The amount of traffic, additional drainage issues, lights, and noise pollution that this would bring to our small neighborhood is quite frankly scary. The developers had a meeting to show the residents their conceptual, all but complete plan on Thursday, November 10th, which was only 7 days after the 2 very small zoning signs went up in the neighborhood. Then 7 days after that, this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is recommending approval to rezone this property. The developers pitched us a high-end rental property, and they are telling the city of Schertz that it is affordable housing. This is clearly a bait-and-switch proposition. We, parents and I, understand that some development on that property was inevitable. We believe that the owners would develop the property in a way consistent with our small community's attributes, not bring in at least 210 rentals. Based on the meeting we had last week with this developer, I can tell you that we are not the only neighbors that are vehemently against this proposed development. I ask that you come to our community, look around, and understand our place. We would be happy to give you a tour and show you what a slice of heaven this community is and how hard the neighbors have worked to make their forever homes. The next is from Nicole Oyster. I'm a resident of the Crossvine community, and I'm writing in regards to proposition for multifamily building reference PLZC 2022-0124. I'm concerned about the addition of a large number of residents without adequate infrastructure such as roads, schools, medical facilities, and emergency services. The next is from Jackie and Gary Oster, 8516 Vine Post. Good afternoon. I'm writing to express my opposition to the proposal of yet another apartment complex. While it seems like the voices of our community didn't seem to be heard on the previous proposal, we are hoping this time will be different. In the past several days, especially on rainy or windy days, the traffic on 1518 has been backed up to our neighborhood. Our roads are simply not able to keep up with the traffic that comes from the growth. In addition, the petty crime, including car break-ins, and property damage, has been growing in our neighborhood alone. There are no police stations within a several-mile radius, leaving our families and properties unprotected. We understand that growth is inevitable in any area, but we strongly feel that growth of this magnitude and pace will have negative impact on our community in the form of traffic accidents, wildlife death, and crime. We ask you to please be our voice and put value on human and wildlife over the economic gains of this project. The next is from Francis Martin. Good day. In reference for this rezoning of the below property, I am unable to attend the meeting this evening, but would like it documented that we are in opposition of rezoning for the purpose of apartment complexes. We are residents of the Crossvine community and are not pleased. This is in the pipeline. Please let me know if you need anything further. The next is from Stephanie and Todd Welch. 8520 Fine Post. Good afternoon. I'm emailing in hopes our voices will be heard by the commission in opposition to this request. It is hard to believe that this is even being considered following another apartment complex being approved on 1518. Some people have voiced concern with house values. Although that is a concern, my concern is different. I'm concerned about the citizens. My first concern is safety. We do not have a police station anywhere near our neighborhood. The response time is already 10 minutes to get here. Are there plans for another station out this way? We have already had an increase in theft in our neighborhood. It terrifies me to think what could happen in an emergency where we need police as it is. My second concern is traffic. It is awful as it is right now. We're going to have another apartment complex increasing traffic and congestion. It took me over an hour to get my daughter to school on a morning when a portion of 78 was closed. We do not have many alternate routes. There is a vision for what TxDOT will be doing, but that is nowhere in the near future. It was mentioned that the schools are ready for more students with another apartment building, but are they? Have you seen the portable outside the high school? There have been days to where my daughter and many other classes had to sit in the auditorium because there weren't enough staff. I do have concerns for property value and the safety in our neighborhood. I don't think another apartment complex on 1518 benefits the citizens at all. Development without resources for the citizens of Schertz seems super irresponsible. We are new to the city. If we had known that mass development in a short period of time was going to occur, we would not have considered moving here. Please feel free to contact us with any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns. And the last one is from April Johnson. I'm writing in regards to the proposed rezoning of property on FM 1518 across from the Crossvine. I would like to make it known that I am firmly opposed to the rezoning for the purpose of apartments. We invested in our home, which is now valued over $700,000, to be away from apartments, multifamily housing. As a realtor, I'm aware of what this type of housing will do to our values. My husband retired from the Air Force in 2018, and we bought this house because of where it is located and the surrounding area. I am highly disappointed in the current leadership who is looking to profit from these changes, even though a vast majority of residents in our community are opposed to these changes. Please take into consideration not only my opposition, but also that of the others in this area. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend, but I would like my concerns to be taken into consideration.
All right, thank you, Emily. All right, back to item 4, the consent agenda, the minutes for the October 26, 2022 regular meeting. Commissioners, do we need to pull this item for discussion? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
A motion to approve the consent agenda from Commissioner Ray. Do I have a second?
I second.
And a second from Commissioner Goldick. There's no discussion about the consent agenda. I'll call for the vote.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 6 in favor, none opposed. That motion passes. Item number 5 is public hearing. And we have 4 of those this evening. The Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing related to zone change requests and replats within this agenda. The public hearing will be open to receive a report from the staff, the applicant, the adjoining property owners affected by the applicant's request, and any other interested persons. Upon completion, the public hearing will be closed. The commission will discuss and consider the application and may request additional information from staff or the applicant if required. After deliberation, the commission is asked to consider and act upon the following requests and make a recommendation to City Council if necessary. So before we get started here, I'll just let me make a couple of general comments about the process. Number one, the status of this project, staff has recommended approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission has not. That's what we're here for tonight. But in terms of both amendments to the comp plan and zone changes, we are only a recommending body. We make a recommendation to City Council. And City Council makes the final decision to approve, deny, or modify. You know, in a comment I heard earlier, yes, City Council are elected officials. We are volunteers. We're appointed to this position. We receive no compensation for sitting up here. We're individuals who are concerned about our community and want to try to do the right thing. Okay, so the way these public hearings work, somebody from staff will get up at the microphone and they'll give a presentation about the whatever their proposal is. After staff is done, the applicant can make a presentation if they so desire. Once they're done, I will open the hearing for public input. That will be your opportunity to come up to the microphone and voice your concerns. After we've heard from anybody that wants to speak, I will close that public input, and then the commissioners will ask questions and discuss it. And sometime in there is where we'll try to answer some of the questions that you asked earlier. Okay. But once again, we are only a recommending body, and council is under no obligation to accept our recommendation. And so the final point is this will appear on council agenda sometime in the future, and normally staff has that date and can give it to you. So you'll get a chance to come back once again and voice your concerns to the people that make the final decision. So item 5A is PLCPA 2022-0164. Hold a public hearing, consider and make a recommendation on a request to amend the comprehensive land use plan by changing approximately 31 acres of the future land use map from the estate neighborhood land use designation to the mixed-use neighborhood land use designation, generally located east of the intersection of FM 1518 and Woman Hollering Road, also known as 12535 Woman Hollering Road, also known as Bexar County property identification numbers 1150385 and 310128, Bexar County, Texas. Emily, a quick question. When I look at the map overlay, it looks like this is two parcels. And so you got two numbers, but it's all addressed at that one address. Okay, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this is the 31-acre comp plan amendment request. Emily Delgado, Planning Manager. So the subject property is outlined in green. Woman Hollering Road, 1518 Founders Classical Academy. And as Chairman Outlaw mentioned, it is all one property address, but it is split into two parcels per Bexar County Appraisal District. You can see kind of that faint blue line there that splits the two parcels. And just to be clear, so it is within the city's ETJ. It's not currently within the city limits, and you'll see that on additional maps as well. So this is the public hearing notice map. It was mailed out on November 3rd per state law. It's mailed out to all property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. That's that red buffer. As of right before the meeting started, we've received 21 responses opposed to this comp plan amendment request. So this map shows the current comprehensive land use plan designation as a state neighborhood, and then on the right side of the screen, that's the proposed comprehensive land use plan designation of mixed use neighborhood, which is what the applicant has requested. This is the comprehensive land use plan exhibit that the applicant put together. Again, it just shows that property kind of in that purple color, and then the dark bold dash line is that 200-foot public hearing notice buffer. So the request is to amend that 31 acres of the comprehensive land use plan from estate neighborhood, which is intended to be rural in nature, rural agricultural half-acre larger lot residential, to mixed-use neighborhood, which encompasses lower intensity commercial, multifamily. That's what that mixed-use neighborhood is intended to do. So per the letter of intent that was submitted with this application, they are the potential development would be a townhome rental community. In addition to the comp plan amendment request They did also request the rezone to apartment multifamily R4, which is the next item on the agenda. And they've also requested voluntary annexation as well. Per conversations with the applicant, they are requesting to table this item, so I'm not going to give my full presentation. I'll give that when this item does come forward for full action. But as of tonight, they are requesting for the item to be tabled, no action to be taken by the commission, and it be heard at a later meeting. And then I just want to kind of point out that from staff's perspective, with the applicant requesting to table, staff is obviously supporting that request to table the item, and it's also going to give staff the opportunity to really hear what the residents are saying and evaluate that as well moving forward with our recommendation. That's it.
All right, thank you, Emily. So I assume then the applicant does not want to make no presentation.
Only if you want to.
Right? No, you don't have to. I really wish there was some way to combine these two because they're.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Delaney Honaker, Killing Griffin and Fairmont, 10101 Reunion Place. We submitted a request for a multifamily zoning to allow for this townhome residential community. We have since held a meeting with nearby neighbors who expressed some concerns and questions. We are in the process of reviewing these concerns as well as some additional city issues. As such, we do not have any plans to share with the Commission tonight. We would also like to respectfully request that this item be tabled until the December 14th Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, this is a public hearing, and it is 7:01 p.m., and I'll open this for public comments. So once again, anyone in the audience, please step forward. Try to keep your remarks to 3 minutes, and your name and address once again, please.
Casey Starr, 4206 Jennifer Nicole, but I represent members of the Tom Williams community. I will be very brief. These citizens didn't ask for this hearing. This hearing was thrust upon them. They scrambled to get here. That's why, in case you were wondering, they were all speaking up front so that they could be heard today. December 14th, a week before Christmas, when people are out of town, the developer has come and asked to table this because they need time to work with the residents. That time was 6 months ago. That time was not 5 days before this hearing to finally tell them what was going on. And it's unfair to burden all of these people to come back a week before Christmas and do this all over again so that their objections can be properly noted on the record. And I will tell you, I have listened to every single person who has spoken from this neighborhood. They are never going to go along with any plan that would allow apartments to be put in the middle of their neighborhood. So whether it's now or a month from now, the story's going to be the same. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Brittany Bassett.
Would you pull that microphone down a little bit?
My name is Brittany Bassett. I live at 11121 Hollering Pass. My husband just retired. We moved in about a year ago. This is the second set of apartments that has been asked to be approved. I grew up in Schertz. My grandmother lives off 3009. I remember riding bikes when it was a 2-lane road. We never envisioned coming back here to this, not once. We came back here because this is family. This is Texas. We wanted to be here. We loved it here. I do not love what I have seen in the last year. I do not want to continue having to worry every night if my cars are locked, because that's not how I grew up. I should not have to worry about that. We have had so many issues in the Crossvines lately. We have no police presence, as it's been mentioned multiple times. When I called to report a break-in in my vehicle, it took almost 30 minutes for a police officer to come out. Who has 30 minutes? I've got kids to get to school. I've got places to go. We can sit, when I exit my house out of the Crossvines, I can sit there for almost an hour if one of the 18-wheelers has gotten stuck trying to turn onto Lower Seguin Road, or if anything is going on at one of the schools. And now you want to add a second set of apartments? There's already too many problems that aren't being fixed. Our police do not have the resources to deal with the first apartment complex, and now you want to add a second one. I really do not understand what City Council was thinking, or anyone was thinking, when they approved the first one. We were here voicing our concerns at that point as well, but nobody listened. So now what? You're not going to listen again? And I get that you're just a recommendation, but they're going to table this. If we table this until December, when's the mayor is what? In a runoff, right? So if they don't get to that before, does it matter? They don't care. Because if he's already elected in January, or the city council people are already elected in January, what recourse do we have? I highly suggest you not table this tonight, and you make your recommendation to the city council so that we can move on. And so that these fine people who actually have to deal with all of this on their road can go home in peace and actually be able to sleep tonight.
Hi, my name is DeLorean Wiley, and my address is 12566 Woman Hollering Road. I'm the house that's on an acre right across where they have suggested to put the entrance to this multifamily complex. I, unlike some of my other neighbors, am not retired. I'm actually doing a PhD program at Texas State University. So I'm a commuter with a young family, and my daughter goes to school at Founders across the street on 1518. So we pay taxes for Schertz, Cibolo Universal City School District, but my daughter does not attend y'all's schools. Y'all, I pay water to y'all, but y'all don't pick up my trash. You don't pave my roads. So it seems really, really unfair that I'm gonna have at least 210, probably 420 cars coming through and turning right at my driveway. That's really bad, poor planning. I am a geography major. I deal with planners on a regular basis. From an environmental standpoint, from the soil structure that they're suggesting putting these townhomes on, to the creek system around there, and the traffic, obviously, there's no good reasons why this should be changed. Thank you. Oh, and I did have opposed things too, but I've never done this either, and
Again, 8795 Quillwood Run. Keep it short. I want you to turn around and look. That purple line on the top, apartments. That's what I'm going to look at. That's our entire property line. Is that what you would want? I'm just asking. Thanks.
I'd like to say quickly that Robert Stanfield, 12654 Woman Hollering, that I think we're putting the cart before the horse here. And I think, you know, what we really need to do is get 1518 widened. And we've got a 6-year, is that what I'm hearing, a possible 6-year out? You know, Lower Seguin is just becoming a joke down there. It's incredibly difficult to get around. I'm sometimes afraid to make a left turn on 1518 to get into my property. I mean, people are flying through there. We really need to look at this and try to figure out maybe 1518 needs to be done before we start into doing a lot of development on 1518. It's obvious from hearing of these other people that we've got a real problem out there. Thank you.
Steve Slate, 8600 Quailwood Run. I just wanted to reiterate one point that I didn't say that only one person talked about. You'll sit up here, you guys have, wherever you live, you can vote for the people in your city. We can't. No mayor, no city council, no proposals, but yet we have to do what they say. That's not right.
My name's James Wiley. I live at 12566 Woman Hollering Road, and that will be my front porch. That's what I will get to sit out and look at, is 3 stories of apartments or townhomes. I oppose this. Please don't let this happen to my family. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Slate, and I live at 8600 Quailwood Run. Like many of my wonderful neighbors, I am opposed to the development. For myself, my father and my mother were some of the original owners of the property in the Tom Williams subdivision. In 1978, my father retired from the military and purchased the property. It's where I've grown up. I've had the privilege of growing up in the neighborhood, and then in my life kind of coming full circle and now living in the neighborhood myself. I'm an educator in Schertz Universal City School District. I've been blessed to grow up as a student in the district, as a parent of 3 children, and now as an educator myself. And so just the thought of our neighborhood turning into, an area with many homes or many people moving in with the apartment, it's just disheartening. I mean, I've, like I said, grown up since I was in 1st grade, and I've watched the development of the land on 1518 and watched people that were farmers that were friends of my father, and, watched the development and the change in the city. And, there's change that's good, but I think in our situation and all of the people that have spoken tonight, I just feel like overwhelmingly it seems like a very bad and poor decision for us as residents of Schertz. Thank you.
Raymond Bruce Torgerson, 8795 Quailwood Road. I know that you all don't make the final decision, and I appreciate you reminding us of that. But whether you vote on this tonight or table and vote on it later, if you all recommend approval and kick this can down the road, we're right there fighting against you again because you've recommended approval. Your staff has recommended approval, and now goes the city council. So now we're fighting all 3 of you. Please don't kick this down the road. Don't kick this can down the road. Step up and put it to bed. Thank you.
Thank you again. Todd Vision, 8926 Green Grant. Just a thought, I know when you looked at the proposal for the previous apartment building, I'd ask you to compare the size and the vocal and really the consistency of the public opinion. I think it's even louder, stronger, and more consistent against this proposal than the previous one that you recommended and the city council did approve. And this is bigger than the properties that are within the red line. So if you do proceed to go and discuss, I think tabling it is a problem because then we don't get to see the actual proposal. But I'd ask the city staff to maybe find a way to facilitate discussion, everybody who's interested, not just the residents who are on it adjusted there, so that we can participate in the process rather than come to it again at the city council. And so I'm standing in firm solidarity with everybody who has had a chance to meet, but I just want to remind everyone it's greater than just the residents who are affected. It's residents around, current and future Schertz residents as well. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sam Birch, 12858 Woman Hollering Road, and I've already spoken, but I just wanted to point out two things. That 200-foot zone that is required by law to notify people does not account for the fact that even though I'm outside of that 200-foot zone, I am directly affected by this. The road that I paid for is being taken from me, essentially. I'm not being paid for it, I'm sure. The road that we put money into is not only a road, it's actually it's our walking path. We walk up and down that road as families, our children. We enjoy that road because it's our blood, sweat, and toil and our money in that road. That road would be taken from us around that area. It would no longer be safe by any standard to walk on or to use as our recreation or our enjoyment, to just walk and meet our neighbors. And that 200-foot zone, I would ask, I don't know who could make it possible, but that we should be notified. Everybody on Woman Hollering Road and Quailwood Run, regardless of the foot distance, should be notified of every action that's going on here, because it affects all of us directly, not indirectly, directly. Thank you.
You're going to make it up here this time, huh? I say you finally got your chance. Come on up.
My name is Rachel Escobedo. I live at 8646 Quailwood Run, and there's only 2 streets in this neighborhood. I don't know if any of you don't have to answer this, but I don't know if any of you have driven into this neighborhood we're talking about. And you keep hearing about a road we take care of. For many years, it's been $200 for maybe 20 homes. That's a lot of money. But the city won't do it because we're out of Schertz. And it gets patched up, and it doesn't really hold for that long. And the road is an asphalt road. It's not crushed granite. It's a real smooth road. It's probably 1.5 miles, the whole thing that people run quite a bit from our little neighborhood, or children ride bikes. It went up to, was it $800 this year? $1,600, because somebody per family, if you wanted to go in with it, because we needed a better road. This patch and fix didn't do it. And we'd live with that and complain about it. So one guy who does work in roads came, one of the guys from the neighborhood, and he did a great job. But I'm hearing that if the apartment does come in, they're going to fix the part of the road that would bring them in, and then we still have to be responsible for about 1 mile still. And that's, I think we've done a good job taking care of it for ourselves, but it just seems like we're really getting ignored, knowing that we're still going to be repairing our road. And I'm real sure people who move into this apartment, when they feel like it, or they're teenagers, they're going to drive all the way down. They're going to get to know that road, so there will be a lot of cars. It's a real nice asphalt road right now, but even between us, when we're coming down that road, we kind of move over for each other, especially if someone has a big truck or a big van. And I'm pretty sure the city would probably do eminent domain and make the road bigger because of this proposal. But that's still only going to take care of a short distance, and we'll still have 1 mile of roads that we're going to be passing each other or waving as we go to work or come home, along with people from this apartment complex that are joyriding for that day. Because it's a cute neighborhood. It's nice to go down it and take a look. So I'm opposed to it. And I'm pretty sure it's going to put it into anybody wanting their children out on bikes on the road. And I'd like to ask you to come take a look at it. We keep talking about a road, but it's a pretty good road with us donating money to repair it. And I'm hearing people talking about how we can't vote for city council. Well, when you go to vote, our names don't, all of us don't have the name for the city council to vote on. So they track that by our ID that we show them. So we're not in that vote for people that are going to take a vote on our property. We've made a lot of recommendations at this meeting and last week's meeting, but if this property keeps changing hands and meetings keep getting moved, it's like we have to come back and do all this, you know, letting people know all the hardship. And I just see us being missed and something going through. And like many of us said tonight, we didn't really find out about apartments going up till last week. And I'm sure it's been in the city council for months. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. My name is Maria Stanfield, and we recently moved like a year ago. Sorry. We really like this place. We came from California. I grew up in Mexico. I learned this second language as English. My parents are from a ranch. He owns 50 acres. We live in California. We really planning to leave like 3-4 years ago. My husband keeps telling me, let's go to Texas, let's go to Texas. We live in an hotel almost a month until we find a place. As soon as we get in on this place, I live on a 12654 Woman Hollering Road. We fall in love with all this neighborhood. I walk a lot. I seem to know that I know everybody there. My daughter is visually impaired. She's 29, 30 years old. She works for Amazon. And I had to drive her every night, like 12:30 at night. She doesn't drive. And I feel very safe getting out from that road and come back. And I don't see how they want to build so many apartments. The other day I heard the ambulance, and they came around the streets, and they came very quick and left. Imagine when we had so many cars coming up. How are they going to deal with that? We don't have a second choice when we look for our house, because the one that we saw, we like it. And this is what we want. We don't have fence between our neighbors because we feel like part of the family. I walk, everybody say hi, even though I still don't know them, some of them. And I hate to see, since there's a lot of people there, older, younger. The other day a kid was driving a little golf cart and he just waved, and I don't even met him yet. So please, try to do something that they don't build something right there. It's state houses. I'm sorry if I get emotional, it's a beautiful place there. That's all I can say. Thank you.
I'm Catalina Wiley. I live at 12566 Woman Hollering Road, and I go to Founders Classical Academy of Schertz, and I've been there since I was in kindergarten, and I can barely even walk for the past 3 years now to school, and I would love to walk because my parents can go do whatever they have to, and I don't have to worry about being in danger. But now that there's more people that live here, I can barely walk to school without thinking of what could happen. And with the amount of people that will be living on our street now, I could barely even walk down our road without being in danger. So it's bad enough that I can't walk to school, and now I can't even walk down our road. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Darren Turner. I'm 12700 Woman Hollering Road. I did note before that we actually talked to the county commissioner's office about the safety aspect of that particular road, and this was before the apartments were going to go in. This was proposed for the Schertz Parkway. In various mornings, I don't go very often in the morning time, but if you look up, there's a road on 1518 from Lower Seguin all the way to Hollering Vine. It will back up to that particular point, and then people start funneling through Hollering Vine. So when we talk about the proposed 200 feet around this particular impacted area, it's going to be much more than that, right? It's going to impact that planned community where traffic is going to increase going through Hollering Vine because people are going from I-10 all the way to 35, or they're trying to go to 1604, something backs up, on I-10, they come down that road. So not only are the residents of that road impacting the traffic on that road where it's dangerous, and now you're going to add on top of that. So I don't think there's been any studies or looking at what that traffic is going to increase before the road is even completed in 6 years. So I turn often from left into our neighborhood, and it's pretty dangerous. Like, people have almost hit me several times coming down the road because there's no way to go around it. That road right there is very narrow, and then our road is a single lane road. So you'd have to expand that to even handle all the traffic going into this proposed neighborhood. So I think that a study should be done to understand what the traffic increase, where that's going to go, and how the impact is on that planned community in Hollering Vine. That's a large planned community for Schertz, and the traffic, just to go from there, because it cuts over to Lower Seguin to bypass the intersection of Lower Seguin. So, and as proposed several times, tractor trailers come from that road from Lower Seguin to turn left to go towards I-10. They get stuck in that area and tip over. So that backs up traffic quite a bit. So it's going to be really, really bad. I think there should be some studies done on what that does and what the impact would be for the traffic coming out of not only our neighborhood, but down that road in general. So, and for the record, strongly opposed. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, it's 7:28, and the public hearing, public input portion is closed. Emily, my plan was some of the questions that have been asked are more appropriate for the rezoning than for the, so I was, if you don't mind, I was going to wait and address those. But I have a question. Since the applicant has asked us to postpone this, do we have any legal obligation to do that?
Yeah, you don't have a legal obligation. You have a request in front of you. You have an application that's submitted, so you certainly have the ability to push it forward. So that's the short answer. I would say this from a staff perspective, even though you didn't ask for our opinion on this necessarily, I think staff would strongly recommend that you continue the public hearing and postpone as the applicant has requested. Our general practice here historically has been when applicants come forward and say, we'd like you to postpone it and rethink about it, we tend to respect that. I think part of what that does is it, in a larger sense, it helps facilitate the applicants considering the feedback they've heard from the applicants. And certainly you heard one person stand up and say, no matter what they do, nothing's going to change. Our opinion's going to always be the same. And yet the applicant took the time to go meet with the neighbors. Part of the reason we encourage that is so they hear the neighbors out. Again, doesn't mean at the end of the day any of these folks will change their mind, but I think the hope with that, having those meetings as we've seen past cases, is that it allows the applicant potentially to make some changes to the request to make it more palatable or to reduce the number of objection or level objection. Doesn't necessarily change their position, but at times you get a better product in the end with that. So that would be staff's recommendation. And again, I would encourage, if you do that, I would continue it till the December 14th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. What that does, again, is that tells folks here, this is when it's coming back. You know that now, that that's when it's going to come back for it, would be my suggestion.
And if we do delay this to December 14th, will that be another public hearing?
You would continue the item and continue the public hearing, so effectively it leaves the public hearing open, which is what we want, because again, whatever they come back with, the applicant comes back with, we want folks to have that same opportunity to get up and speak to it, so that at the end of it, you understand what the proposal is, you understand what people's concerns are with it. Yeah, we would suggest that as well. And so again, you know, I'll continue on, I guess. Certainly, I think staff has concerns if what appears to be the case with applications is that they request continuation and continuation and continuation as a way to sort of wear folks out, that they don't show up and then let's go on it. That doesn't seem to be the case here. This is the first continuance with it kind of going forward. Again, they mentioned they just fairly recently met with the property owners out in the area, which we would certainly encourage. And again, want to try to be respectful when folks do make that effort, that we're willing, as a result, then to respect the request for continuation. Otherwise, kind of what point is there for applicants to go do that if you know, they can't then take the time?
Okay, well, it's always difficult, but I want to make sure the audience understands there are two related but separate issues on the agenda tonight. The one we're on right now, 5A, is an amendment to the land use plan. The current comp plan, as was pointed out, has this area designated as estate neighborhood, large lots, the sort of thing you're living on today. And what the property owner, the developers ask is that we amend that comp plan to mixed-use neighborhood, which it's kind of a, it's a squishy thing, but mixed-use neighborhoods are typically larger developments where you'll see some commercial retail, some residential, and this particular use allows apartments, multifamily. The next issue we're going to talk about, but all that would do is to amend the comp plan, and it would change that area from estate neighborhood to mixed-use neighborhood. The developer would then, and you see that as item B, that does not, amending the comp plan is not a zoning action. Part of what we are kind of under an obligation to do is when somebody wants to rezone a piece of property, one of the things we're supposed to do is look at our comprehensive land use plan and make a determination, is that proposed zoning consistent with the comp plan. Well, in this case, it isn't. But they are two separate issues. If we were to decide to approve the comp plan, that doesn't give the owner or the developer the right to build apartments. He has to get the R4 zoning. So, commissioners, you know, I've done a lot of talking. Once again, you know, the developers asked for more time. They'd like to meet again with the residents. Most of the residents would rather we send this to City Council tonight. So we have some options. We can postpone it till December 14th. We can recommend that council approve the comp plan amendment. We can recommend council disapprove the comp plan amendment. So anyone want to jump in here?
Do we have an option to go into January as opposed to the middle of the holidays?
I think you certainly do. You know what you always have the option to do, and this might be my suggestion, is you can table it till the December 14th meeting. If you find at that meeting that because of the holidays you don't, you know, that there's a concern with the way things have changed and people making it in, you at that meeting would have the ability to table it or continue it again to the January meeting. And so certainly can appreciate, you know, folks saying it's over the holidays and sometimes people travel and whatnot. Not sure January is a whole lot easier at times with people doing things, but that could be the option, is table it again rather than a future distant non-date specific meeting or January. I would table to this one, but you certainly could table to a future meeting and set that specifically as the January meeting, whatever the first meeting in January.
It's January 11th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's what it is.
I'm just thinking, you know, instead of kicking this can down and having people come every month, let's just move it to a month where everybody can be there and get this cleared. Because part of the problem is our land use plan, and we don't have that settled yet as far as the city's concerned. So we have these developers basically setting up our land use plan. That's the way that I'm seeing it. And I think we need to get this behind us so that everybody knows what Schertz is going to look like for the future.
Sure.
Anyone else? We'll certainly accept a motion if no one has any further comments or discussion.
I make a motion that we table this to the January 11th meeting.
You have a motion to postpone to January 11th from Commissioner Ray. Do I have a second?
I second.
That was Commissioner Carbone. And let me jump in here real quick, because I see Mr. Torgerson sitting out there shaking his head when we, you know. I think it's only fair to the applicant that if they've asked for more time, primarily because they want to work a little bit more with you folks. Now, again, I don't know what they can do to change your mind. I think the attorney's statement that you're not going to change your mind is highly likely, but I think we owe that courtesy. And, you know, if you're concerned about this, you know, this is the bunch that will be here, you know, one or two, when we hear this again. And we have heard all of your comments tonight. They're on the record. So even if you were not to come back, if we postpone this, even if you were not to come back, we still have, we heard what you said. And you know, it's, the lady from Crossvine, You know, they feel because council, we recommended approval of that apartment complex on 1518, council approved it. And based on that, you know, she feels like we didn't hear them. Well, we did hear them, okay? But landowners, you know, it's really tricky to tell somebody they can't do something on their own property. But that said, we look at these things case by case. We're not, you know, we're not going to apply, you know, the same thinking that got that one on 1518 approved. Things are different with this one. Where it's located, the makeup of the neighborhood, there's a lot of things that are different. So just because we recommended approval of one doesn't mean we're going to recommend approval of this one. But again, I think we owe it, since the applicant has asked for it, and we're actually going to give them almost 60 days to try to work some of these things out. So, commissioners, anything else? Okay, so I have a motion to postpone to January 11th. I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. 6 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. Okay. Item B. PLZC 2022-0124. Hold a public hearing, consider and make a recommendation on a request to rezone approximately 31 acres of land to apartment/multifamily residential, R4, generally located east of the intersection of FM 1518 and Woman Hollering Road, also known as 12535 Woman Hollering Road, also known as Bexar County Property Identification Numbers 1150385 and 310128, Bexar County, Texas. Right?
Thank you, Commissioner. As you note, this case is the related item to the last one. Again, the recommendation would be to table this as well. It's rezoning, or it's zoning the property, as it's not in the city limits, doesn't have current zoning. So the zoning would be to R4, which would be to allow multifamily per the regulations in the City of Schertz Code of Ordinances. One thing I will note, just to avoid issues in the future going forward, is as we show here, we have the 200-foot notification map that's required per the city code and per state law. So to start touching on the questions, there was a request to notify everyone on Woman Hollering Road. That becomes problematic for the city. Again, part of the reason that we request you note which meeting you're tabled to is all the folks here know that that's the case. Certainly as residents hear of these things, the way the system works is we rely on neighbors to speak with one another and say, hey, I got a notice I'm within the 200 feet. This is when the meeting's going to be, things like that, that we typically see. That's sort of the way the system works. Certainly, we have to post the agendas for the meeting. Those are done 3 days beforehand. So generally, what folks can do is prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings or City Council meetings, they can certainly check those agendas and look for the items going forward. But it becomes problematic for us to agree that will guarantee we'll notice folks beyond the requirements that are provided. But I will say one thing on that, just to avoid issues down the road. As you know, there is a requirement of City Council that if we receive objections from more than a certain percentage of the property owners within the 200-foot notice area, that triggers a supermajority at City Council. The areas included, while the city provides notice to all the property owners within 200 feet, whether they're in the city of Schertz, not in the city of Schertz, or even if they're in another city, we do that as a courtesy, that provision for the 20% only applies to the properties within the city of Schertz. And so just for awareness for folks with that, as we've talked about before. So just for the awareness for folks on that. So again, we would recommend this be tabled with the last item, but a couple of things were questions that were asked of staff additionally or asked about the process. The first had to do with what sort of, when the survey was conducted on the property. From a staff perspective, I don't think we know when that was done. Certainly, I think one of the benefits of the continuation is we can ask the applicant for that information, and we can include it in the staff report as to when that survey was done, whether they're using an old survey for the purposes of this or they went out and had the property resurveyed. And again, the survey we would be looking at would simply be a meets and bounds survey, identifying, pins and things like that, rods on the property to say this is the boundary of the property, is how the survey is typically used at this point. There was a question about the buffer area. We use buffer areas differently in different situations. So as you know, when we come to site planning and the requirements of the UDC, often when you have different uses adjacent to one another, a landscape buffer is required. Typically what that buffer is it's an area generally defined that you can't do certain things within. So you can't construct buildings, can't construct parkings. And again, because of the request being for the R4 zoning, any kind of buffer that was provided, the one I'm familiar with would be the landscape buffer within the provision of the code is how it's used. So again, doesn't mean they can't have playground equipment there, doesn't mean they can't do things like that, but you generally can't have buildings, parking, things like that within that defined area. And then the last question had to do with what sort of long-term impact study is done with this case or done with zoning cases. We really don't do sort of long-term studies with regard to proposed zoning requests or comp plan amendments going forward. We sort of evaluate it based on the compatibility of land uses, impact on infrastructure, city services, things like that, as opposed to a long-term study to say, what is this particular rezoning going to do in 20 years per se. I mean, fundamentally, that's part of the framework we look at. I think, certainly city staff has talked about this before. We don't look at where we are today or where we're going to be next week or next year. The assumption is the city of Schertz is going to continue long past, outlive all of us, and there's going to be someone here 50 years from now, 100 years from now, things like that. And so, again, we try to make decisions that are sustainable in the long-term best interest of the community. The last question had to do with how will cars be accommodated. So again, the request we have right now is for straight zoning. Staff doesn't have a layout. They haven't submitted an application for plating, and so, while we understand the applicant has a general layout and they've talked to the residents about that, we don't necessarily doubt that. At this point, we can't say how specifically traffic would be accommodated. Obviously, the property in question has frontage on FM 1518, and then it has access onto Woman Hollering Road, which, as we understand, is a private street per se, and they would have whatever rights the property has per however that was set up or established kind of going forward. So again, I hate to assume too much at this point with that as it may not come to pass. I think that was the questions. Most others were sort of comments generally, but in terms of information. But certainly after this item, we're happy to catch questions from folks and make sure we kind of cover that in the staff report when it comes back.
All right, thank you, Mr. James. Does the applicant want to talk? Again, you don't have to. Okay. All righty, so it is, I wish that clock was right, because I know I'm going to say it wrong. It is 7:48. And at this time, I'll open the hearing for a public comment. Well, actually, what, and we see this a lot, because again, these are two separate actions, but they're very interrelated. So most of what I heard in the previous item really was addressing the rezoning, or the fact that you don't want apartments there, and that's the zoning request. But this is a separate item on the agenda. It's a separate public hearing, and you folks are more than willing to speak. If you've got more questions, more comments, the floor is yours.
Todd Vision, 8926 Green Grant. And maybe this is for another time, but I'm confused on the criteria the staff used to recommend approval if he said, like Brian said, he doesn't have the traffic flow information and all that. So how did we get to approval or a recommended approval by the staff at this stage?
All right, thank you, sir. Come on up.
Casey Starr, representing the Tom Williams subdivision folks. I see this as far as whether we kick this can to January 11th with the other one, or whether you just flat out deny this change at this time as a separate and distinct issue. Right now, you haven't even got to the new plan. You haven't even got a new plan in place yet, and that's going to be pushed until the 11th. Without a new plan, obviously, there's no reason to approve apartment zoning. So I think this is a little bit different. I think today you can vote down this plan. You can recommend against this plan. You can recommend against the rezoning, because once they get through their new land use designation, if they do, they can petition for the zoning change at that point. But I would love to see the wonderful members of this community go home with some good news tonight, that at least through Christmas, they don't have to worry about the property next door being rezoned for apartment development. I do have a couple questions that I'd like answered during y'all's discussion time. Will cards be resent to everyone for the new notice of hearing if there is one? Will the documents that were all submitted in support of this hearing today be included in the next hearing's commissioners' packets? And my understanding from listening to about the supermajority is, and this is more me speaking to try to clarify my understanding, make sure that I'm correct, that if more than 20% of the residents who receive a card return it in opposition, then a supermajority is required from the city council to approve the plan, meaning you need more city council members to approve it if enough people return their cards. So that's why I want to make sure everyone is really clear about if they need to return a second card or if this first card will count. So thank you.
You're welcome. Come on up to the microphone. And the tall person keeps forgetting to pull it back down.
I wonder if there's any golfers on your panel right now, because that used to be a golf course. Okay, so, I mean, if you're sitting there wondering, where the heck is this place that they're all so agitated about? And they love. It used to be Carmack's golf course with all the oaks, great landscaping, 8 holes, and most of the time they'd reserve it for 16. If someone came through, it was a real organized spot. And there was a combination at the gate. They could come and go and not be in anybody's way, and well-run place. That's all I wanted to say. Once again, I wanted to know if you knew this, and brag about it some more.
Bruce Torgerson, 8795 Crowwood Run. I would like to, instead of going through the whole thing that we did on the last one, are my comments that I made applicable to this one, because in my opening statement I said I'm opposing to both A and B of this. And I could go through them again, but I would just as soon not. You're volunteering, you're here, and we're out here sitting too, and we're not leaving until we've kind of resolved some things as much as we can at this time. So as long as I don't have to reiterate everything again and it's on the record for both, I'm good. Thank you.
No, sir, it's, we understand, and again, we see this frequently up here, that we've got these two issues, and no, I think we all understand that a lot of the comments that were made in the previous item were really applicable to this one, and so we've heard them. Come on. Well, come on up and speak into the microphone.
Did they ever answer my survey date question?
Yes, sir, they did. They said they had no idea. They could ask the developer for that information, And, you know, if maybe we'll make a note that would be good to know for the January meeting. Emily, okay?
Well, the reason that I ask is because a month or two ago, about that time, they came out and they put stakes down our road around property at the very end of the cul-de-sac, and somebody painted a big, huge white arrow right in front of my house on the road. And I called the city of Schertz, and I asked, what's going on? And they said, we have no idea. We'll send somebody out. Within 10 minutes, someone was at my house. 10 minutes, faster than fire, ambulance, police, everything. They were at my house. I asked them, what is that? We don't know. Looks like some kind of survey thing. So why would that be here? We don't know. So either somebody is not presenting information to us because they're wanting to go behind our back or whatever. I just want to make that clear. That's what happened, and it makes me question the legitimacy of how they're going about all this stuff.
Hi, DeLorean Wiley again, 12566 Woman Hollering Road, and I just wanted to second that I do think it doesn't make very logical sense to go ahead and vote on the zoning if we don't have the plan. So I just wanted to get that out. And I did want clarification on what was considered a resident for the supermajority, because I did receive, I guess, the notice for the 200 feet, but like, I don't even know if I'm a Schertz resident half the time. So, because I pay Bexar County taxes and my my address is considered Converse for CPS. So, am I? Or am I the part of the vote? Thank you.
And I'm sorry, what's your address?
12566 Woman Hollering Road.
Yeah, okay.
Darren Turner, 12700 Woman Hollering Road. I would like clarification on the supermajority question as well. It sounded to me like because we were not a part of the city, that would not trigger the supermajority vote. If that is the case, that is another incident that really our voices aren't heard because we're not city residents. And so we really have no, I mean, we're vulnerable here, right? And we're at your mercy. So I think that, you know, I think you made a statement about what is Schertz going to look like. You don't have a plan. We have 6 years for the road before it's going to be, you know, fixed. What the impact of adding more people onto it. How about we take an opportunity to figure out what that is? I like the idea of moving it to January 11th. We can sort some of that out. But I still think the traffic from a safety perspective is going to be a concern, not just for us, because we are the community that's impacted, but Crossvine as well. They're definitely going to be impacted. It's not going to be a planned community. It's going to be a highway at that point for the traffic going through it. So I think they should be notified that this could impact their community, not just ours. So, again, strongly opposed.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right.
Brittany Bassett again, 11121 Hollering Pass. I'm that one little bitty house from the Crossvines that's fully in the red circle, the one. Nobody in the Crossvines knew anything about this until I posted it on our Facebook site. So obviously that's a problem because, like everyone else has said, this isn't just an issue for Quellwood Run, Woman Hollering Pass, or Woman Hollering Road, but also for the Crossvines. So I understand that this 200-foot buffer is required by law, but I mean, there has to be another way to get this out. And also too, when it comes to the supermajority, if you have to be a resident, only the Crossvine people are residents of Schertz on this, right? So does that mean if just I turn it in, that's 20%? Is that all that is needed? I mean, seriously. So if you could please clarify that, I would appreciate it. Also too, I want to point out that on the apartment specific issue, My house has a limestone wall right next to it. About 6 months ago, we had a car that hit that limestone wall. Imagine how many more times that's going to happen if you put an apartment complex there.
Sam Birch, 12858 Woman Hollering Road, and I just wanted to restate that we are also opposed to this proposal B. And I also wanted to ask a question about the survey. If I could, I don't know if this was Steve's intent, but when he was talking about long-term studies, I thought it was talking more about traffic and things like drainage for our floodplain and all the concrete and impermeable runoff that's going to be created from any kind of a apartment complex. So I think that is not, how is it going to affect us 30 years down the road? That's how is it going to affect us as soon as it's built. And so if that's not something that's already been accomplished, I would reiterate what another said, is how can we recommend that this is going to go forward without having answers like that?
Anyone else?
A lot of us in the room, my name is Rachel Escobedo, 8646 Quailwood Run. In our neighborhood, if we need the police, Schertz police to come, they call Bear County. But then when you call Bear County, they're like, can we do this over the phone? And then I said, there's something sketchy going on next door. What's the use of, if you see something, say something. But we're lucky that fire will come. Even though one time, one member in here did have a yard fire 3 years ago, and it took forever for Schertz because they said we're not part of it. But Atkins came, and when they got to 15, 18, and 10, they realized they couldn't cross 10, but they saw the smoke and they came anyway. And it was just a grass fire that takes off real fast. I think I just wanted to tell you another idiosyncrasy about we pay so much tax and don't know who to call sometimes. I'm sure if there's anybody new here, they need to get a Bear County direct line number. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name's Nick Dyer. I'm with the applicant, or I am the applicant. I would say I didn't want to be perceived as not being willing to speak. I am willing to come up here and just acknowledge what we're hearing and acknowledge the fact that, candidly, I'm not surprised at the feedback that we've all heard tonight, and that's why we've proposed to table this. And I didn't want to sit back there and asked if I want to speak 2 or 3 times and it appear that we don't want to speak. There's a reason I'm here. There's a reason we're sitting here with our ears open and listening to the feedback you're getting. And again, not surprised with the feedback, and that's why we didn't want to progress this evening. So I do appreciate y'all, and I appreciate everybody here, and we've got a gap that we need to bridge very clearly, and we're trying to do that. So thank y'all.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's not a problem, Mr. Dyer. As I explained the process at the beginning, staff talks, and then we give you the opportunity. It's not required. Now, if you weren't recommending postponement, then I would expect that you would give a presentation about what you're planning. But no, we kind of understand the situation. Anyone else?
Casey Starr for the residents. Just before the public discourse is closed, I would like some clarification so we can ask follow-ups if we need to about the supermajority rule. whether that is resident or resident in city limits, and clarify, so if only one card goes out to one person within the city limits and that person responds disapproving, does that mean we're at 100%? Thanks.
Okay. Well, the way the process works is we'll get you that answer after I close just the way the process is. So anyone else got anything to say? All right. Oh, okay, almost.
I just wanted to close. I'm Michelle Slate, 8600 Quillwood Run, and forgive me, I wasn't preparing to speak tonight, but just the more that I sit and listen to all of the information, I think I can kind of speak towards, like Mr. Torgerson, the legacy of the land and the property where we live. As I spoke of earlier, my father was one of the original landowners. I was I've been blessed to be a landowner because of my father, passing down the legacy. And then, with that hope of wanting to pass the legacy on to my children someday as well. I mean, speaking to the golf course, I was a young child who would go and grab golf balls from the golf, people playing golf, and drive my dad's golf cart up to the golf course. And I've seen our neighborhood from, the very inception of it until where it is today. And so, just for all of us in the neighborhood, and where my property is and where my parents' property is, it would be right in one of the entrances into the apartment complex. And so it is very disheartening just to think of this beautiful property that was passed down to me and my family. And, to know what the plan is now is disheartening. So just again, to put on the record that myself, my family, we oppose.
All right, thank you. Sure, come on, that's all right, come on up.
Catherine Torgerson, 8795 Quillwood Run. I just would like to invite you out to our property. Come and take a look. If you don't come and see it, you don't know what you're doing. We'd love to have you come. We will leave our gate open during the day. You can wander in. We don't have a dog. There's a sign that says beware a dog. The dog's gone. So come on in, come and see. Come and see what it's going to look like for us to have apartments all along our property line. Thanks, appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And the photos that you provided, sir, that kind of drives the point home. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? It is, 8:06, and I've closed the public input. Brian, would you like to address that supermajority question?
We'll give it a shot here. So for the resident living at 12566 Woman Hollering Road, they are not in the city of Schertz. They do not pay city of Schertz taxes. So yeah, you can check the appraisal district and it shows the tax rolls where you are and what you pay. City of Schertz also has a mapping application that you can look and it shows properties in the city limits or outside. So with regard to the notification, yes, staff will renotice the property owners within the area, and certainly all of the written information we've received prior to the packet going out will be included in that packet going forward. So you often see all of those attachments that will be done. With regard to the provision on notification and protest, so in the Code of Ordinance, it's references a protest that's received. It affects the council vote. It triggers a supermajority, which is a 3/4 vote. There are two protest provisions. One is from the property being rezoned. That's not the kind of protest we would get, obviously, since that's a request to rezone is coming from the property owner. It's the second, which is it's not residents, to be clear. It's if the owners of 20% or more of the property within the 200-foot notice area. Now, the caveat to that is there's a different provision in the Code of Ordinances that reference the notice area, or the notices are sent based on the most recent version of the municipal tax roll. And so that's what effectively indicates that if official purposes of the notice and the protest, it's only people on the municipal tax rolls. To be on the municipal tax rolls, you're in the city of Schertz, thus you pay city taxes. So that's the way that provision works. There was a question as well with regard to the traffic and the analysis that's done. So what I will say is when staff looks at comprehensive plan amendments and zoning cases, we do sort of an initial estimate based on the typical standards of traffic generated based on the proposed zoning. And so typically what we do is we look at the property, we know how many units per acre the zoning allows, we'll evaluate physical features that likely would limit it, and then two, we'll often factor in and kind of look at it based on what a typical density would be as opposed to the maximum density that's allowed, to estimate the typical number of trips based on the IT manual and sort of trip generation to get a feel for it. And really the issue here, just as folks know, and it's a little bit of both ways, is, you know, as everybody knows, FM 1518 at this point is the only road that runs north-south through southern Schertz and crosses the Cibolo Creek and the railroad tracks in 78. And we've talked about this in the past a few times. If you look at typical spacing, as somebody in a planning school would know, we don't have the appropriate spacing of roads to accommodate development. That's not, you know, we're not the only ones to not necessarily have that, and that's due to a variety of factors. So FM 1518 is going to be a significant road. So it is a 5-lane road, 2 lanes of traffic, raised center median, turn lanes going forward. The intersections will be expanded as well. So obviously much different than it is today. We have also talked with this commission in the past about the timing of those and the timing of improvements. Traffic impact analyses are, you know, it's more relevant to the site plan and the platting than it is this in terms of site-specific improvements. As you mentioned, and this is sort of the bad news, the project is to be let by TxDOT next summer, is what we understand. That will likely be a 5-year or so project. So it will be under construction for a long time. Not as long as I-35 will be under construction with the next project. And certainly, as some of you may know, they finally had the groundbreaking ceremony today for FM 1103. That will be under construction for a number of years as well. We've talked about this a lot. In Texas, because of the Texas Local Government Code and things like that, the effect of that is those road improvements generally follow development. Cities rarely preemptively are able to get out ahead of that and afford to do it. It comes after the fact. You know, again, that's provided from a number of different sources. So, and again, a significant amount of the money for the FM 1518 project came through Alamo Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, federal funding for that distributed by the state, but certainly there was match by the city and Bexar County. So I think that was generally all the questions.
Okay, getting back to the supermajority, that's if, what percent?
It's the owners of 20% of the property. So it's not 20% of the properties that are noticed.
Right.
So you take that geographic area, again, we use a different graphic. This shows everyone noticed. The graphic we would use would just be those properties on the municipal tax rolls, and it's the owners of 20% of those properties. So as you know, oftentimes, most recently I think it was the homestead rezoning request, we had one property owner owned a large amount, and that one property owner was able to trigger the supermajority on that request. We've had others that it takes 30 property owners to get it. So it's the owners.
Well, looking at your notification diagram here, I see the fact that it doesn't include the entire property is irrelevant.
That's right.
Right. So I see three properties that I think are in the city of Schertz, and they're all over in Crossvine. So only those 3 properties would count towards the
so again, it would, let me back up. I hate to stand up here and say which properties they are and which they aren't. Yeah. Again, we can certainly create a graphic next time and provide it in the packet. the formula is a little bit more complicated than that. I don't want to get into the kind of specifics of it here. It's real hard. But yeah, certainly folks can go on the website. They can look at the properties that are zoned, that are in the city, and those would be the properties.
Okay.
And again, it's within the notice area, the 20%. So it's irrelevant how big the property is. It extends further out. It's within the notice area.
All right. Thank you, Mr. James.
Yes, sir.
So if the commission will indulge me, I've been making some notes here of my own questions and comments. Yes, I remember the Carmack Golf Course. I was out there, not a lot, but several times. I've lived here since 1989. I got here just before they widened FM 3009. I spent 25 years with Schertz Fire Department. And I hear a lot of comments about the traffic on 1518. Well, the real big problem is that's a state roadway. City can't do anything about it. Now, whether you know it or not, the city committed $10 million, $5 million? I think it was $10 million towards the kitty, towards getting that road improved. But I will tell you, up until probably the mid-90s, I could run calls out 1518, and there was nothing out there. And now we've got Crossvine, we've got Willow Oak, we've got all those developments out there, and the problem is they've created some of the traffic issues that are on 1518. And so it becomes one of those, well, I got mine, but I don't want anybody else to have theirs. I get it, okay? But I remember a time when we didn't have any issues. We would make in a month, Schertz Fire Department might make 3 runs into Southern Schertz, okay? There just wasn't a lot of issue out there. But I wanted to address a couple of things. Number one, you folks are finding out you're learning the disadvantages of being in ETJ and not in the city. You don't get to vote. The city is not going to maintain your roads because they're private roads. It's the same way up in Carolina Crossing and Berry Creek, these gated communities. Those are private streets, and the city is not going to spend taxpayer money on private streets. Now, one thing you do have, and I've said it many times, I don't blame you. Why would I want to voluntarily annex in the city and pay more taxes? Okay, it kind of defies the logic. You're fortunate in that the City of Schertz Fire Department has a contract with Bexar County, and we provide fire response into unincorporated Bexar County, including your little neighborhood. I can't remember ever going there, but, and now we have that Station 3 that's right there on Lower Seguin Road. We had a problem with EMS for a long time because Schertz EMS was not the contractor to provide service. It was, well, I think it was Acadian for a while and whoever preceded them. I think we've got that squared away now to where Schertz EMS will respond to your neighborhood. Unfortunately, law enforcement doesn't work that way, so you're absolutely right. If you need a police officer, it's going to be a Bexar County deputy. Now, if we're out there and we can ask for a Schertz officer and they'll come help us. I say us. I've been retired now for several years, but I still consider them my family. So it's part of that, because you're not in the city, you are kind of constrained. What's supposed to happen, and it's a Bexar County dispatch issue, they are supposed to, your address should be mapped in their system to dispatch Schertz Fire. But what happens is now it's a little bit better than it used to be because they do it electronically, but they should send an electronic call to our dispatch center, and then our dispatch center will send our fire department. Well, obviously, it doesn't always work, listening to that one story. And we talked about notification. And that's something this commission wrestled with 2-3 years ago, because it used to be that the only notification were the people in that 200-foot buffer. And we got to talking about it affects, typically a zoning action or something will affect more than just those people in the 200 feet. So our best effort, and we continue to assess it and refine it, the fact that those little signs are now required, that's because we decided we needed to find a way to notify more people in the community. Unfortunately, they are small, and I'm not sure where they are out there on this project. They may not be visible unless you turn into woman hollering. But that was our good faith effort to expand notification. Traffic impact studies and drainage are typically, the way the process works, in this case it requires a rezoning. But even if it didn't, they have to come in with, the next step, assuming they were going to build these apartments, is that they have to submit a plat. And that's a legal description of the property. It shows where the utilities are, where the roads are going to be. Well, it's during that stage of the process that the city engineer addresses drainage, and planning staff addresses traffic impact. So that's something that, just because you don't see it tonight doesn't mean they're not going to do it. And then we come down to the comp plan. Yes, I personally, have some, the comprehensive land use plan was a consensus document that was developed over several months of input from all the stakeholders. And that's what, as a group, what the city wanted to see in not just southern Schertz, but it includes the whole city. And we haven't addressed that. Unfortunately, we let that go too long without updating it, and now we're seeing the developers come in, and they're telling us the market has changed. Large estate isn't selling. I disagree with that, but so they're trying to mold the comp plan to suit market needs. And I would much rather see us finish redoing the comp plan. And even though I've only been on council or commission here for a few years, again in the fire department, I remember when we were doing that comp plan and we were looking, San Antonio ceded that area to us. A lot of your neighbors were standing here and they were, saying that property, we've had that property for 100 years and we're never going to sell it. We're not going to do anything with it. Well, those are the people now that are standing here saying we need to do this with it. So it puts us in kind of a difficult spot, but it's so again, commissioners, what we're of course it's certainly you're welcome to comment, ask questions. I think these two go hand in hand, and since we certainly could not recommend approval of the rezoning because it's not in conformance with the comp plan. And we've postponed that discussion to January 11th. So, anyone else have anything on comments or questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. James, you confused me about supermajority. I thought I knew what it was. Are we looking at, you have to be a property owner and a citizen of Schertz, or just a property owner?
So let me word this again. And to be clear, we generically, and again, it's an industry term to say a supermajority. Code says 3/4. So it's 3/4, just to be clear what it takes of council. The wording is very specific. It's if we receive a written protest signed by 20% or more of the owners of, let me back up because I misspoke it. if we receive a protest by the owner or owners of more than 20% or more of the property within the notice area. So the property owner doesn't have to be a resident of Schertz, okay? But the only properties that count toward that 100% and then 20% are properties within the city of Schertz. Technically, it's properties from the most recent tax roll is what it is. It's not an issue here, but it's even more nuanced.
So I have a question too.
No, go ahead.
Those city residents pay city?
Not residents.
Okay.
Don't think residents.
Okay. But they're property owners that pay taxes to the city of Schertz.
In theory, they do, yes. They're on the tax rolls. Whether they pay taxes or not is a different matter.
Very true.
So again, you can have a nonprofit, you can have exemptions of a variety of reasons. But yeah, if you're in the city of, if your property is in the city of Schertz when it's annexed, it goes on the municipal tax rolls. Is effectively what it is.
Do we know how many notices were sent out?
We can tell you how many notices we sent out. 23.
Okay, so 23 received notices.
And again, when I look at the red line map, I see 3 properties that are in the city. And then the question begins, no, sir, I'm sorry, it's the public input's done.
So if I may.
Okay.
The property owner whose property is under consideration for a rezoning has at this point submitted a request for annexation. So the consideration for annexation will only be of the property for which we received a request for annexation. And that's the property, I'll go back.
Just the 31 acres.
That's just the 31 acres, okay? Just the property in blue. No one else is getting annexed.
Yes. From January 2023, 8630 East FM 50 North, it's going to become part of Schertz City.
So let me.
We opted out years ago. We were supposed to be in it 2 years back.
Yeah. So.
Which I'll say January 2023, we will be part of Schertz City.
Yeah.
So come January 23, the next meeting, are we allowed to vote in our vote count again because we are then annexed into the city?
So to be clear, and I'll show you in a minute, there are properties in the ETJ for which the city of Schertz has delayed annexation agreements. Those were initially for a 10-year window. Council and many of the property owners agreed to extend that. There wasn't a reason at the time to annex. The city would still have to go through the annexation property in order for those properties to be annexed. They don't automatically, as of January 2023, become annexed. So the city would have to go through that process, whereby, again, those folks would be noticed. That's a separate action unrelated to this. But again, I'll
All right, sir, I need to ask you, please, the public part of this. Yes, sir, but public input is closed. And so if you have a question, after the meeting, you can talk to, staff will be here, anything you want to ask them, that goes for any of you. If you have more questions, you can ask staff. But now, this part of the meeting, it's between staff and the commission. Okay?
So again, we've got properties that you can see on the graphic, and I'm trying not to zoom out too much to create an issue, but essentially the colored properties are the ones that are in the city limits. So again, you can see the property in question here, And you can see the properties that are within the city limit area. Okay. Those are those properties. So again, we can provide a graphic at the next meeting showing just those areas to clear up the confusion.
Okay, commissioners, go ahead.
Thank you. So earlier, there was a lot of mentioning that the development would render certain areas on the flood zone or on a floodplain that may not be today. And I just wanted to know, can you speak to whether or not the city does a study or take that into consideration before moving forward with plans for development?
Sure. So again, it's, let me get the right map. Okay, so I've turned on the layer with the flood zone level. So again, it's not clear how developing this property would cause someone else to become in the floodplain. So again, the typical, I mean, you know, what you typically get where property developing or a change in property would cause someone else to be in the floodplain is if you took an area that was in the floodplain, right? So we have this area that in a theoretical flood event, it inundates this area. If you came in and you filled a portion of that, right? So you took a portion of this area and you filled it with dirt or rock or whatever, buildings, then that water that would have normally come in that would have inundated that area, where does it now go? It's been displaced by the building or the fill, and so in theory it pushes outwards somewhere, right? That's the concern you worry about in terms of development in the floodplaining, raising that flood level. And so again, for example, if the school over here came in and they filled in this entire back area, raised it up 5 feet of dirt, something like that, as an example, and this is a hypothetical and may not actually happen, just trying to illustrate the point, then water would no longer inundate that area. Where does it go? Well, it may push out to this area, it may push out up here, it may push out down here. That's the concern you have with filling and developing in the floodplain, how it would cause someone else to be in the floodplain next time a flood study was done. And again, that's typically what we have regulations in our drainage ordinance prevent, is to demonstrate that no-rise condition. What we hear more often, if this is a help, is there's concern about not a floodplain, but about, call it flooding. And so the idea would be, again, here, for example, when we get a heavy rainstorm, water comes down and it drains somewhere. Now, it may drain into the ponds for a certain level. It seeps into the soil and is absorbed here, and a certain portion of it may run off the property. And again, I don't know quite which way it runs. It probably kind of comes down in here and in this area. And so the idea is if you came in and paved this thing entirely, then where does that water all go now, right? Because normally some would go into the ponds, some would seep into the soil, some would run off. If you paved it in concrete, it's all going to run off, or the vast majority, and would run off very quickly. Again, the city's drainage ordinances are designed to deal with that so that they don't increase the rate of runoff from the property, which is what we often hear from residents about. They're going to build something, and now the water's going to run onto my property more than it was. And that's what our drainage ordinances are designed to do, which is why you see detention ponds out there in most developments, is it's to handle that water that would normally seep into the soil, goes in the detention pond, and is slow released. So that's typically what we get as a concern, just for the distinction for folks.
And just to be clear, because the lady asked the question, all of these in favor, opposed, all of the things that were mailed in, dropped off, emailed, those will all carry forward to the next meeting.
That's right.
So, it's, so there won't be any need for you to resubmit.
That's correct.
Unless, you've got some more comments. Some of you wrote some pretty eloquent letters and things, and I can't say, I'm not going to say you can't send in a new one. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. We'll hold on to what you've already sent us. In addition to what, this has all been recorded. It's, we're not going to forget what you said tonight. So, anyone else have anything? So we have the same options here, Commissioners. We can vote to postpone until January 11th. We can recommend approval or recommend denial to council. So
Mr. President, I recommend we cable these two together and hold it off till the 11th of January.
Second.
okay, and that was Richard? Yeah, and actually to be technically correct, the motion should be to postpone to January 11th. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Richard?
Excuse me. I recommend that we postpone this until the 11th January.
Okay. Any further comments or questions?
I'd just like to make a comment.
Sure.
And I took quite a few notes, and I think the recommendation to table until January, just in the interest of fairness, right? So what I heard a lot of was, we don't want change, but I think tabling it till January speaks to compromise and an opportunity to gather more information so that we can make really fact-based decisions as opposed to emotional ones. I do understand, being a resident here in Schertz and having to go through the widening of Schertz Parkway and the developments going up and how it changed the city. So I do have an appreciation and respect for the homeowners, but I also think that it's at least fair to take the time to have the conversation, to really understand the concerns and see if there are any resolutions or compromises that the developers might even want to consider. But at least we have the time to have that conversation so that everyone can, one, feel like they've been heard, and that those that are going to be rendering a decision or a recommendation would also have the time to even gather more facts on the matter. So with that being said, I think that tabling until January gives us the opportunity to do that. I know that it doesn't kill it or approve it, which is what I know some people wanted to hear tonight. But I think in fairness, it at least gives you an opportunity to gather the facts so that fact-based decisions can be made. There were a lot of great questions asked today and issues brought forward that I think need to be considered as well, and gives us the opportunity to gather that information. So with that being said, I We'll pass back to you, sir.
Okay. Any more discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 6 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. We'll postpone that item until January 11th. And again, if particularly in the back there, if you have more questions, we've got some more things to go, but certainly check with staff. Okay. Okay. Item 5C is another public hearing. PLZC 2022-0175. Hold a public hearing, consider and make a recommendation on a request to rezone approximately 0.14 acres of land from single-family residential district R2 to Main Street mixed use, generally located southeast of the intersection of Randolph Avenue and Exchange Avenue, also known as 204 Randolph Avenue, also known as Guadalupe County Property Identification Number 67555, Guadalupe County, Texas. Emily?
Good evening, Commissioners. So this is for 0.14 acres, specifically 204 Randolph, a rezone from single-family residential R2 to Main Street mixed-use MSMU. Emily Delgado, Planning Manager. So the subject property is outlined here in green. This is Exchange, Randolph, Main Street here, and then again, the red is the 200-foot buffer notice. So 23 mailers were sent out on November 3rd. We have received 1 response in favor, and again, the subject property outlined there in blue. This is our current comp plan map. And then this represents the zoning exhibit. So the left side represents the current single-family residential R2 zoning district, and then the right side is the proposed Main Street mixed use. So the comprehensive land use plan for this property does designate it as that historic downtown Schertz, which is intended to leverage Schertz's history and heritage and to create that unique destination for local businesses. The rezoning request will have a minimal impact on public infrastructure, facilities, or services. The comp plan does the land use designation in the comp plan does directly correlate with that Main Street mixed-use zoning district, which does allow for both residential and commercial uses. It's a unique zoning district where they can kind of go back and forth. The property owner is requesting this zone change. So let me back up. Show the map one more time. So the property owner does own the property here as well. This is the counselor's office currently that's located on Main Street. And the goal for the Main Street mixed-use zone change request for 204 Randolph is kind of 2 purposes: to use the home that's there currently, use it as a commercial business. At this time, there was intent in the letter of intent that would be used as an expansion for that counselor office. And they would also like to use that property to create more parking spaces. Those parking spaces would not be designated just for 204 Randolph, but could be used for the Hidden Grove, which is across the street, used for the counselor's office. It's going to be kind of an expansion of that parking lot, and use the home for commercial purposes. And then as you can see, so the property in front of it is currently zoned that Main Street mixed use. The property's across Randolph, again, Main Street mixed use currently. And then based off of the adjacent land uses, both being Main Street mixed use, it being in that designation on the comprehensive land use plan, staff is recommending approval of the requested zone change.
Is the applicant here?
He was here.
Okay. All right. Another public hearing. It is 8:43. Anyone wishing to address the commission, step forward. Name and address.
My name is Thomas Perkins. I'd like to thank you for your time tonight, because I am a part of the city of Santa Clara Planning and Zoning. I know you're all volunteer here. I do own the property on 305 Randolph Avenue, which is not the corner lot, but the one in the middle there, sir. I don't know if y'all can see up there. That home was built in the 1930s, sir. That is not in the historic district, even though it was built in almost over 100 years now we're talking about. There's no parking on Randolph Road. I don't know if y'all understand that. So I only have a driveway, and they have to park up on the grass because I have a beautiful pecan tree that I don't want cut down so I can have another parking spot. I have that house as a rental property. I have complaints from the tenant multiple times, all the time. It's a very hard house to rent because of the bar and the activity that you'll have until 11, 12 o'clock at night. So I don't care if they're going to build a parking lot or what they're going to do. That can bring food trucks. It can bring all kind of other nuisances that we do not already need and I already have a problem with. Excuse me. But it doesn't seem like anybody else, makes a big difference. But it should be all, there's no need for it to be mixed use. It was a home there, then they moved the home because they wanted to think they can get more parking there. I understand they're going to make more parking, but unless they're going to dedicate it to the city and the city can provide parking for those businesses, there's no need to change it to mixed use. It needs to stay residential. There is no parking on either side of Randolph. I have no parking on Randolph, so they're going to be parking. There's going to be a lot more people moving at night. And like I said, I already have complaints all the time that they're just too loud across from the bar, across from that barbecue joint, and there's just too much traffic there, and it just really is a bother to us who own the property and have to get that call at 12 o'clock at night, especially when you have a new tenant there complaining that there's just too much noise, and they call the police, but they're not over the certain decibel level, so they can't do anything about it because it's a mixed-use property and it's zone commercial. So thank you for your time. I would like you to disapprove this, but like I said, it's not up to y'all. It is up to City Council, as I understand that. Y'all are just what do they call? Recommendation, yes, because I'm on the planning and zoning in Santa Clara. I've only been there about a year now. I'm still trying to get the hang of it. So I'm just trying to help the community here, and like I said, I have a problem with it. I don't know if anybody else has a problem with it, but I do have a problem with it. So thank you for your time. I did wait 2.5 hours to hear you, to let you have my little speech.
Yeah.
And I would like to know what they're gonna, I would like to have heard the property owner say what they were gonna do with it. Because I don't believe they're just gonna make a parking lot out of it. Next thing you know, there's a 2-story building. Who knows?
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
I'm Linda Perkins, and I'm his mother. And I have owned that property since he was 5 years old. And it's always been a residential area there. Of course, things are changing now, and I understand that. But once we change that to a mixed-use piece of property, anything can and will happen. We've already got trouble out there on Main Street with all the noise that goes on at night. And I have a heck of a time with my tenant. They call me, they tell me that they're loud out there, and I believe it. I do. But they could bring in food trucks there and park them in the parking lot at night. And then we're opening ourselves up to all kinds of other stuff. So I would like for you to consider turning it down. I'm the only one here with my son. Obviously, the rest didn't get the notice or didn't care. But I do care what happens to that area. It's a lovely little neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And it should not become a big commercial place out there. Well, it's a lovely little neighborhood there. It always has been. And I'd like to see it stay that way. And like I said, if we change it to mixed use, then we're opening a big can of Pandora's box. They could and can do anything once you've changed the zoning. That's what can happen. So I'm concerned about it. That's why I came up here and sat here for 2.5 hours to get my chance so y'all could hear from me. So I appreciate your time.
Yes, ma'am. And I often wonder why staff puts the agenda together the way they do, but it's a... Yeah. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Okay, public portion is closed at 8:48. Emily, you have any additional comments?
Happy to answer any questions. I know what the letter of intent said, which was that they would use it for commercial purposes, and the main goal was to increase that parking lot because the property owner does know that parking in that area is a concern.
Yeah, during your presentation, she indicated that the applicant intends to use that house as an extension of the law offices, but, you know, you're correct. Once we rezone it, now, they can't put just anything there. They're limited to whatever is allowed in MSMU. But, yes. Okay. So, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place because, you know, somewhere along the way, the city, and I personally have some concerns about extending Main Street uses onto Exchange. But, you know, that decision was made for us by City Council when they defined the Main Street, what do they call it?
Revitalization zone?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it extends from Main Street to that south side of Exchange. So, commissioners, who else? Anybody else have questions, comments?
I do. So, just wondering, what is the whole plan for Main Street mixed-use project, first of all, or zone? And what consideration was given to the fact that residential homes are right behind that area?
So I would say from my understanding, the entire intent of Main Street mixed use is to allow flexibility to try to revitalize Main Street. So it allows that flexibility for the properties to go from residential to commercial back and forth in an effort to try to revitalize Main Street. Main Street mixed use does have different requirements because of that flexibility. The parking is different, the buffering is different for Main Street mixed use because it can go back and forth. You know, we do look at the surrounding properties like we do with any zone change. The Main Street mixed use is directly in conformance with what the comp plan has. As Mr. Outlaw said, it's in that Main Street area that City Council's really focused on. So that is why, you know, staff made the recommendation of approval to MSMU.
Thank you.
There are already some commercial businesses on Exchange, and with the revitalization of Maine, if this property owner already owns the property adjacent to it, I mean, you did say it's the same owner, correct?
Same owner owns this property and this property along with, you know, the other side of Randolph as well.
Yes.
As I mentioned in the letter of intent, the property owner indicated that the parking would be to try to help with the situation that's happening there currently with 603 Main Street, 204 Randolph, 539 Main Street, you know, so basically the properties that you already see that are MSMU, the goal would be, let's zone this property MSMU, let that parking lot expansion happen, which cannot happen with the current R2 zoning. They cannot build a parking lot. So that's the main intent, at least from what's been shared by the property owner.
I have one more comment or question, I guess, ask. I'm down Main Street all the time. Aren't most of those properties on Main, their backyard is on Exchange? They go all the way through. Like the front yard faces Main Street and it goes all the way to the back to Exchange. And
I would say some of them. I believe there are some that do front on Exchange. I'll be honest, Ms. Goldick, I couldn't tell you how many, or
okay.
I'd be happy to pull up the aerial if you'd like to. I don't know if we could see
Because
it here,
it's
maybe.
my understanding anything on Exchange at that point, will it be mixed use, or they'd have the option to apply for that?
Exactly like this
That's Main
property
Street
owner
mixed
did. They have that opportunity.
Mhm.
They can request the Main Street mixed use, but they're not currently zoned that.
Yeah, the property currently zoned R2. And what the issue here tonight is to rezone that to Main Street mixed use.
You pull up the notification map, it shows that some go straight through that one.
So it looks like some of them
Some
do,
go
but then we
straight
have
through Exchange.
some that got right on Randolph, and then it looked like from the aerial, maybe further down this way, some of these maybe.
Yeah, some of them go all the way through, some of them don't. I have a house on Randolph, I have a house on File, I have a house on Rice. We used to have one on Cook. Some of those go all the way through, some of them don't. You know, that one, the thing is what gets me, y'all switch it to mixed use. And I understand the public comments over, you switch it to mixed use, and then they could sell that property and put something. That's what it is.
Well, again, you're absolutely correct. We zone it, we don't define what the project is going to be. So and again, we're only going to recommend to City Council. But if they change it to MSMU, then anything in the table of uses that they could do. You don't happen to have that handy, do you? Okay, no. Okay. Might tuck that away back, you know. And I don't, it sounds to me, maybe it would be appropriate for City Council to review the noise ordinance. Cibolo had a lot of problems with the same kind of thing there on Old Main Street, where they were getting a lot of noise complaints, and they seemed, I don't know how it's working out today, but they seem to have worked through it. So that might be something appropriate to bring to a City Council meeting. Anybody else? Okay, we have some options. We can recommend approval, we can recommend denial, we can recommend approval with some kind of a modification.
So I can make a recommendation of approval with the potential study for noise ordinance or potential change in that, or no?
No, I don't know that that would be appropriate, Judy, because then we're obligating, I think that's up to City Council. And again, I don't know what the current noise ordinance is, what the decibel level is. It's somewhat encouraging that at least they come out, but no, I'm not sure that would, we can do it, and then City Council, again, can, they can agree or disagree, but...
The only thing I would say with that, and it was like Lisa's probably walking up here, I don't feel like it's appropriate to tie the two together. Then you would be holding this zone change until that full ordinance, revision works through the process.
I agree with Emily, and then I took notes, made myself an email to talk to management about looking over the noise ordinance. I can actually relay that to the police department, and so we can work on that. Okay.
Because that's sort of been, we've dealt with other issues here in the commission. We've dealt with what are called pit pads, and the issues usually deal with parking and trash, and the city's position has always been that we have ordinances to deal with those kinds of things. And if they're not, then maybe they need to be revisited. So.
And I believe in the nuisance ordinance, we do have...
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's time limits on it, where it shuts off at a certain hour, and there's also limitations on construction.
I think there's
and
decibel
residential
levels as well when it comes to noise.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I just have one question. If you're looking at that right side, so what you're saying is the people want to change that green square to mixed use, and they already have mixed use in front. Right. And so why didn't that get done the first time? I understand, but they own both properties, right?
Just recently.
Oh, just recently.
Just
Okay.
recently purchased, yeah.
Judy, you were going to make a motion. You don't have to, you can leave it to somebody else.
I think for us to sit here and say the noise order, I can't even say, thank you, and the mixed use, I think that those decisions are already passed. I think once we started putting a bar and a club and food trucks, we already decided to make Main Street a commercial type of area where we want people to shop and have fun and enjoy themselves. I understand your concern, sir. I do. Not to say that I don't, but I think that that's passed. And we flipped the page already on Main Street, and I think the property owner who owns this property has every right to develop the property to better serve their business and the businesses around them, just as much as you have every right to come in here and petition us to turn it down. So that's all.
Just to point out again, it's part of the Main Street district, but the property we're talking about is on Exchange. So, yeah.
But we're going to use the Main Street mixed-use designation to identify it. And so if we're going to use the Main Street mixed-use identifier, then we're basically saying that that area is part of that area.
Well, it is. If you look at the land use plan, that's whatever it's called, the Main Street area includes both Main Street and the south side of Exchange, yes.
And we can use Main Street mixed use anywhere in the city, not just on Main Street.
I don't know.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And we have.
I think technically we can.
Okay.
Well, I make a motion to make a recommendation. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
To council to approve PLZ C20220175 to MSMU.
So I have a motion to recommend approval from Commissioner Goldick. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was John. Yeah, I have a motion and a second to recommend approval of PLZC 2022-0175. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 6 ayes, none opposed, that motion. Now, it's been, if it's okay with the commission, I've been asked by staff to skip item D for now and go to 6A for the preliminary plat of the homestead and then come back to D. Is there any objection to that?
Be tonight or
Yes.
next?
Well, it'll be
December 14th.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on then. We're going to move on.
Can we order pizza?
We haven't gotten close to our record yet, folks, okay? Item 6A is PLPP 2022-01, there are too many twos in here, 0192, consider and act upon a request for approval of a preliminary plat of the Homestead Unit 11 subdivision, an approximately 22-acre tract of land, approximately 1,500 feet southwest of Homestead Parkway, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Sam?
Good evening, Commissioners. Samuel Haas, planner. Okay, this is an aerial map. You'll see the property in question outlined in green here. If I can find there it is. This property is going to be approximately 1,500 feet from the terminus of Homestead Parkway, which is off to the west over there, off to the east, I'm sorry. And it's about a mile south of the I-35 access road, and just to this is Fred Couples right here. So the applicant is proposing to preliminary plat approximately 22 acres of land, establishing 62 single-family residential lots with a minimum lot size of 9,000 square feet. The preliminary plat has 3 points of access. One is being proposed from Fred Couples, like over here. Another one is going to be from Hutchinson Way, and then another point of access is going to be at Reeves Lane to Gaines Gap, then to Sundown Parkway, and that's going to go off to Homestead Parkway. The applicant has submitted a tree affidavit, which indicates that the site does not contain protected or heritage class trees. The site is serviced by the city of Schertz for water and sewer, also GVSUD for water, and CCMA for sewer as well. It's serviced by GVEC, AT&T, Spectrum, and CenterPoint Energy. The preliminary plat has been reviewed by the Engineering, Fire, Planning, and Public Works Department with no objection. As a result, staff recommends approval of Homestead Unit 11 preliminary plat as presented.
All right, thank you, Sam. Commissioners, questions, comments?
And this goes down to the city limits of Cibolo, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, this is the last part of Schertz.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's it right there. Right there down the south. Mm-hmm.
So looking at the plat, the access from Fred Couples, it looks like it's outside this plat. Is that because it's included in a previous plat for another unit?
I believe this is Fred Couples right here, right?
You're going to make me turn around. Yes, right there.
Yeah, part of Unit 5.
Okay. So that will be in place then when we do, I got to figure out where we are, or when we do Unit 11. Okay.
Yeah, so prior to acquiring the final plat for this unit, the final plat for Homestead Unit 5 and Unit 9 must be filed with the county clerk. So that'll provide the access.
Yeah, and looking at it, it looks like, I love city limits, I really do. So we got Sundown Parkway where the north side is in Schertz and the south side is in Cibolo. And so when it, it just, as an emergency responder, that kind of stuff bothers me. I'd much rather have it run down the back fence line to where the streets or themselves are in the jurisdictions. But given the cooperation today between the two fire departments, and of course EMS covers it anyway, probably not going to really be an issue. All right, commissioners, we're still with room for more discussion, but this is our action to take. We can approve it, deny it, or approve it with conditions. And I assume this meets all the requirements of the, Homestead's a PDD, correct?
Correct, yes.
So you guys have verified that this is in?
Yes.
I recommend approval of PLPP 2022-0192.
All right, I have a motion to well, actually, this is our approval or denial, right? So, and I'm sorry,
Recommend approval.
Okay. It should be, leave out the recommend, just if
Okay.
you want to approve it, then, yeah, make a motion to approve.
Yeah, make a motion to approve
All right.
PLPP.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. So I have a motion and a second to approve PLPP 2022-0192, preliminary plat of the Homestead Unit 11 subdivision. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just a comment. I think a long time ago, we adjusted the city limits down on that end. It was kind of squirrely, and I think Sundown Parkway is going to be all in Schertz, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the roadway is, but the houses that they build on the south side will be in Cibolo. So, but you're right, yeah, the two cities got together and they made some adjustments up there in Homestead to further, to make it easier to define the city limits. Anybody else? Call for a vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. That's 6 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. Okay, I guess Emily ran off to consult with Brian to see if we want to do um, 5D. No, thank you.
Okay, so Brian's UDC amendments, we would like to postpone them again, but he has requested that if all of you can stick around for just a minute, he has documents he wants to give to you. But if we can postpone the discussion till next time.
Or, I think what Commissioner Broad was hinting at is, if we've read through it and we're comfortable with it, now this is a recommendation, this isn't our approval. So all we're going to do is recommend to City Council.
Is he going to hand out something related to this?
Yes, and then just as a reminder, in the packet, there was only red lines for 2 of the proposed amendments, the SUP and the parking, but the landscaping is still part of that, and I think that's probably what Brian has for you all.
There he is.
Well, that's okay. I hope you were able to satisfy or at least to answer some of their questions. I think it's time well spent.
I'll give you guys this. Are particularly with regard to the landscaping sections, and I'll come out and hand each a copy of these to start looking at. We'll get them to the other team. What I'm giving you is, there you have a version 2 new set. The current landscape section, the current section of the code that's not within landscaping that deals with that deals with the landscape provisions, and you'll see that as part of the current at the back end of it, and that is the additional design requirement. So again, one of the things that's wrong with our landscape sections when somebody comes in is they look at the landscaping and we go, yeah, that's great, but did you flip back 50 pages and see this? And like, no. 2 separate sections. So I've given you both of those under current. And then we've got a couple of different options for you in terms of modification. And the idea was to try to streamline this bit. So you've got a draft 1 that's a little bit of streamlining with it. We've got draft 2, which we looked at from a slightly different perspective, which are what are the things that are challenges and to some degree in other areas that we may want to do slightly different that affects some other areas. So 1 and 2 are pretty similar, but you'll be able to kind of compare and see the differences. And then we basically gave you version 3, which is this, if you really wanted to go all in and go, why do we require them to do this? Why do we require them to do that? That's what version 3 is. So in version 3, I think is a couple pages long, 3 pages long on version 3. So it's a bare bones, we're just going at the most critical kind of stuff. What we've done generally with the others, and I won't take too long, is part of how we divvied it up is we made clear, here are the requirements for landscaping for a single-family home, and then we put multifamily and non-residential in a different category. We split it. So it doesn't confuse the 2. It's just easier to use. But generally what we did on those versions, the draft 1 and the draft 2, is it's a little bit on 3 as well. It's a menu option. So one of the complaints is I've got all 12 or 13 of these things, and I have to do every single one of them, but one of them is really hard for me to do. There's no flexibility. The answer is yeah, there's no flexibility. So what we did is we sort of cut to what we think are the most important, and we said you have to do 6 of those 8 or 6 of those 9 or something like that, a little bit of a menu option. And so one of the questions is, if you thought about that and you thought, okay, if they did just that, how do I think that looks? And is it enough? Or you may go, no, 6 isn't enough, make them do 7 of the 9. That's the kind of stuff. Or, now here's this real critical area, make that a mandatory requirement, and there are a few mandatory requirements. But that's what it did. But the last one is really, if you said, what are just some of the key core things that the city wanted to do that if we said we really want to just stay out of people's business, that would be version 3. Now, is that the right one for us? Don't know, but that's what version 3 does with it, okay? The others are a little more straightforward. You know, in terms of the SUP, what we did is we took out the requirement, and I can certainly pass that one out. We took out the requirement for the site plan. And again, the thing we hear a lot about is the SUP is a zoning event, and it's discretionary. So you can say yes, you can say no, assuming it's not get is, how much does that site plan really matter? And so the thing we run into is the QTs that come in. Generally, they're going to lay it out how they're going to kind of lay it out. And are you okay with the gas station, convenience store or not? Does it really having that site plan make a difference? What we did in it is we took out the requirement for it, but if you read the draft, what we've got is, as you know, the commission can impose conditions as part of the specific use permit. And so what we added under conditions is that you can require a set layout, should be site layout, a site layout. So not a full-blown site plan, but if you basically say, I want to get the gist of where the building is relative to the parking, you can still require that on a case-by-case basis. And often, developers will have some schematic on these things. So QT, for example, probably has some general schematic. They say, if you want to attach this, it's not a full-blown, yeah, we're happy to do it, if you even need that. And then we'll talk about the parking as well. And so maybe since we don't have a big, hopefully if we don't have a big multifamily zoning case in December, we can spend our time on it. I will tell you, you know, and if we do, we may just see if we can pick a special meeting and just go through code stuff. So take a look at it, and we'll come back when it's not too late and go through this stuff.
Okay. All right, so this is a public hearing. It is 9:16, and I will open the floor for public input. Anybody want to comment about this? No? I'm surprised you two are still here. All right, one more chance. Anybody? All right, at 21:16, we close that. Commissioners, Brian, I've got a quick question, because my concern with, I didn't want to let go of, I understand the concern about a full-scale site plan. To me, some kind of a concept plan, I think, helps.
Yeah.
But given that what you're proposing now, how would we ask? That would be after the fact we'd ask for that?
No, not quite. So here's what likely the way that would work is, if as we go through discussion, we would try to get a feel for what are the sort of things where there's an SUP that you would want that site layout. And so, for instance, if you said, like, what's something beyond a gas station convenience store that requires an SUP? Yeah, so like a mini warehouse public stores. Maybe you guys go, oh, we've seen these gas station convenience store, dime a dozen, we don't need to see it there. But these mini warehouse things, that we kind of want to see. And what staff can do is tell the developer when they come in for that SUP, hey, you're coming in for a request for a mini storage, you probably ought to prepare a rough layout. And likely they've done that already to make sure stuff fits. And bring that with you, even hand it to us, let us send it in the packet as an optional. And if you guys want it, then you can attach it as part of the meeting. Now, the other thing you can do is if they don't quite have it prepared and they want to tweak it, you can say, you know, we're not comfortable necessarily, it sounds like approving this thing without it. We're going to table you, come back next meeting, get your site layout, your concept plan to staff, include that in the packet, and then we have the ability to tack it on.
Would it be unreasonable just to require that as with all SUPs?
So It's not, so let me say this, it's not necessarily unreasonable, right? But I think that the complaint we get is twofold. One is, how much detail do you want? And even now, as we talk about this, and I've changed the language to not say site plan, how much detail do you really want on this thing? So take the gas station convenience store. What is important about the layout for the gas station convenience store that's at Schwab Road and 35? Right? Maybe nothing in that one, or maybe something. I don't know. That would be the question. So the question is, why make them do it if that's not really the one that you care about? That's sort of the thing. Well, the other part of it is, and if I may, the other part of it is, and I got this today, funny enough, QT at Cibolo Valley Drive extension, hey, what we got approved, we got to make some shift in building. Are you guys okay? Will you approve it? And I said, I don't know, send it over to me and we'll take a look at it. That's the other problem with it, is this constraint of, so for example, if you remember that QT at Cibolo Valley, if that building shifted over 5 feet to the north, do you guys really care? And you may say, well, I don't want to see it and tell you, but that's the issue they get into, and so that's why what we hear from developers is we prefer not to do it. If you guys feel like you have to do it, it's certainly reasonable.
Well, you know, what I started to say is my concern is always access, where are the driveways going to be for traffic flow, but okay. You mentioned landscaping, you had 3 drafts.
Right.
Which is staff's preference?
So here's what I would say from a staff perspective. They're all different, and it's based on how you approach it. They all have pros and cons to it. If you ask staff on a really busy day, they'd probably go, man, that 3 is looking pretty good. That's a whole lot less work for us because we can't keep up with it. But when we've got a complaint about a bunch of soil that's come off a site because they only had to put a little bit of sod down on the property, they go, man, we should have gone with version 2. You know, if you want to go with just some slight modifications, that's a little bit the draft 1. It cleans it up a little bit easier to use. It really is a philosophical, and I'll tell you this, I think where staff is sort of struggling is trying to understand what our philosophy is on this. Because as those who've been on a while know, statement we heard a lot, man, we're proud of the high standards we have at Schertz. Doesn't have to be easy, and if you can't make this thing work and don't want to, then maybe go to whatever community you would name that I won't name up here and be on record cracking on another community. I mean, that was sort of the deal. Now, the flip side is it can be really hard to develop. You guys hear the complaints. It takes a long time to get through the process. There's a ton of stuff have to look at. You got a whole lot of regulations their engineer and developer and architect has to look through. And the more regulation you have, that stretches out the time. It takes more of staff time. And the question is, how much value does that really add in the community? The other kind of part of it is, and this is this deal of, it's that philosophical thing, we've talked about this before, of how tight do you want to write the reg to say, I don't want somebody to slip through. I really don't want to. Let's got it really tight, really high. But what you do with that is you hang up a bunch of folks that you didn't intend to, that we have conversations going, sorry, you can't do that, the reg doesn't let you know, versus bring it down to where a few more people can slip through, but you're not hanging up unintentionally people. That's just a question. And it's really a question, what's the stuff that makes a big difference in the community? So again, what's the one we got from the guy at the deal at 1604? It's the screening of the... Yeah, so we've got the provision, you got to screen vehicular use areas. You got 2 big warehouses with big lots of 18-wheelers and trucks and vehicles and something. They hate that. He's got the same thing I've got. What does it matter that, because the truck driver can see over it to begin with. That's the sort of stuff. And so some of this stuff is, you can say, well, it doesn't look quite as pretty, but how much value does that really add? You know, it's a judgment call. But what people tend not to want is, I don't want to see just concrete at the doctor's office out front. So that's, I think, where staff is struggling is, we're trying to figure out where P&Z is, and we're trying to figure out then where council is.
Well, as you've said many times before, we're not stuck with whatever council approves. They can approve it. If it doesn't work, we'll change it.
Yep.
You've said that many times before. I think we have at least one commissioner, and I'll defer to him, but it sounds like he'd rather get this over and done with rather than keep kicking it down. That's why I asked you which version you
That's fine by me. I mean, I got nothing.
So commissioners, again, this is a recommendation to city council. But who wants to ask questions or?
Yeah, happy to answer questions if you guys want to go through on stuff right off the top.
I'd rather go through the handouts that he just gave out.
Okay.
If we didn't have those, I'd recommend go forward, but.
So you want to make a motion there, Commissioner Broad? Want to postpone this?
I move that we postpone PLUDC 2022-0135 until the next appropriate meeting.
Okay, and I assume would be our December 14th meeting, but yeah.
And maybe the caveat is, assuming we don't have a lot of or lengthy items on that agenda.
Well, as I said tonight, it's,
The next appropriate meeting.
Next appropriate meeting.
Okay.
And I'll tell you this, if you guys are open to it, I think I'd be happy to schedule a special meeting and just go through these if you want. So if we can't kind of get it on fairly soon, if you guys are willing to show up one night that's not Monday Night Football. Huh? I'd feed you. What do y'all want? No, hey, look, I got to tell you, EDC is the only board that gets regularly fed. So if you guys show up for a special P&Z meeting on ordinances, I'll feed you.
All right, so I have a motion to postpone this item to the next appropriate meeting. Do I have a second? I'll second. All right, a second from Commissioner Goldick. Any further discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 6 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. We're going to get this done one of these days, Brian. Okay. Item 7A, request by commissioners to place items on a future P&Z agenda. Anybody have anything they want to discuss? Announcements by commissioners. Anybody have anything for the group?
I have a question for staff, if I may.
Ask.
When are our January meetings?
I think it's January 11th.
11th and 25th? Okay.
Announcements by city staff.
Okay, good evening. Just a couple site plans, show you guys. First one here is Health Texas Schertz, located at 650 FM 3009. This is going to be a 6,943 square foot medical office. Okay. And the next one is Marshall Shredding. This is located off of 17348 Bell North Drive. This is going to be a 9,446 square foot office warehouse.
Where is this again?
Off of Bell North Drive, north like 3009, like, yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah.
They're already up there. They have a facility. Apparently. Yeah.
I guess I can, oh no.
But again, this is not these, as much as I wish they were, they're not discussion items, but if you have questions or comments, right over there, okay? Actually, I should point at him because he's the one doing it. That it, Sam?
That's it.
All right, item 8A is information available in P&Z packets. If you were to look towards the back, it has a list of current projects and what we've sent to City Council and what action they may or may not have taken. So, item number 9, there being no further business for this commission, this meeting is adjourned.